This is Presley. Bride's Dock on Portum Island, Book 6, by Debbie Civil. Narrated by Ishkiia Paige. Prologue. Dear Cassandra, in a month, the council will convene to discuss the fate of your matchmaking business. In the meantime, we advise you to select your next match with care. The women you have invited to the island thus far have been embroiled in drama. We were displeased because our resources were used to settle frivolous disputes. Not long ago, one of the mail-order brides you matched to an upstanding citizen was temporarily deported from the island. What's unforgivable was another bride who you matched with an affluent businessman led a mob into the council's chambers. Your business can benefit the young men on this island, but we aren't convinced that your judgment is sound. We're writing to notify you of the possibility of the council appointing a CEO to manage the mail-order bride agency. You may lose the autonomy that we graciously allowed you over the matchmaking service. We urge you to be cautious of your next selection. If there's one more misstep, there will be consequences. Sincerely, the Council.
I can't believe I'm doing this, Presley said to herself. She was standing in front of the scarred door of the cheater's apartment. Her best friend Carrie shifted from foot to foot, her eyes wide with excitement. She held her battered digital camera at the ready. Presley nervously yanked at the hem of the horrid t-shirt she wore, wondering why her twin insisted on wearing clothing that failed to accentuate her curves. Carrie's sudden humming pulled Presley from her thoughts. She gave her friend the side eye.
I got this, Bree. You can trust me.
Carrie's stage-whispered words didn't instill confidence.
I'm Ainsley, remember?
The grip that Carrie had on her camera faltered, and it fell onto the stained carpet floor. She groaned and picked it up. They didn't call her Clumsy Carrie for nothing. Hopefully Patrick didn't hear the commotion. Presley knocked on the door. Carrie pressed her back against the opposite wall as if it would conceal her. The woman was almost 6 feet tall, with jet black ringlets that fell past her shoulders. It would be amazing if Patrick's eyes didn't immediately gravitate toward the beauty. Luckily for Presley, Patrick only opened the door a crack. "Pat, let me in. We need to talk," Presley pleaded. The man that her twin planned to have a life with answered the door dressed in nothing but a towel. Ugh, he so wasn't her type. "Come in," Patrick encouraged, a knowing expression on his face. Presley followed Patrick into the apartment, grateful when the door was left ajar, giving Carrie a view of the eccentrically decorated living room. There were animal figures on every surface. "Nice zoo," Presley blurted out, eyeing the pig, giraffe, and chicken figurines on the coffee table. Patrick shrugged. "My girlfriend's parents' apartment woman gift. What brings you here?" "Okay, Pre. Channel your sister. Remember, if you call him a tool, he'll know something's up." We had a plan, Patrick. Why did you ruin everything by getting with Shelley?" Patrick's tender expression reeked of insincerity. "Ainsley, you know I love you. Shelley's parents have connections. Dating her is a strategic move. I'll stay with her until my restaurant is off the ground. Then I'll come back to you. I'm doing this for us." What a slime ball. Was he serious? "Oh, I see." "Will you wait for me, babe?" Not even Ainsley would be moved by that self-serving pig's logic, but she stayed the course. Presley forced tears out of her eyes. "I don't know." The no-good mooch bought her devastated act without question. It's so hard seeing you with her. Remember, babe, it's harder for me.
I have to pretend to love someone, but I'll suffer so we can have a life together. I love you."
His declaration was followed by the moment Presley was eager to catch on film. Patrick gripped the back of her head with his hands and kissed her. Thankfully, the towel was knotted at the tool's waist. Presley wanted to puke, but moved her lips against his. A thud caused her lips to break apart. Carrie was sprawled half in and half out of the apartment door, her camera an inch away from her fingertips.
"I got the shot,"
Carrie cried before snatching the camera up and getting to her feet.
"What shot?"
Patrick demanded. Presley turned to face her twin sister's no-good ex-boyfriend and smiled. "I'm not Ainsley." After those words were stated, Presley shoved Carrie out of the apartment and they made a run for it. Chapter 1. Carrie parked her beat-up Honda in front of Moore's Diner, a dingy restaurant with subpar food. Presley's twin worked as a waitress and was subjected to the horrid stench of overly fried food and horrible tips. Shelley's sleek SUV was 2 feet away. If only Presley could slit that monster's tires. Shelley had picked on Ainsley since they were children, tossing vicious insults that bit deep.
"Need me to go in with you, Bree?"
"Don't you worry, Carrie. I got this. I'll walk in, say a few friendly words to Shelley, then tag her in the post."
"Or you can tag her now and send it."
"So Shelley can take it out on Ainsley? No thanks. We both know my sister isn't the best with confrontation." Carrie fiddled with her infinity keychain.
"I have a bad feeling about this."
"Don't you worry, Carrie. I got this. I'll call you later."
"I can wait for you.
Go. I don't want you to be late for your lunch with Simon. I'm sure he has good news for you," Presley teased, hoping that Carrie's brother would finally announce an engagement. He had been dating Tara for over 2 years. Presley briefly imagined the dress she would wear, a pink halter dress that hugged her curves. Her fingertips tingled with excitement at the thought of sewing such a masterpiece.
"You're right. Don't pull Shelley's hair out."
Presley smirked. "I don't make promises I can't keep." She hopped out of the car and braved the Virginia winter.
"Damn it. I forgot my coat."
She turned to see that Carrie was already driving away. No sense in holding her up.
"I'll ask Yolanda for a ride home,"
Presley decided before rushing inside the diner. Her eyes zoned in on Shelley and her wicked friends. She stepped closer to the table so she could eavesdrop.
"Hon, can you please send this back? I asked for grilled cheddar cheese. You gave me American. Also, can you please tell the cook to use less salt on the tomato soup?"
Shelley's voice was high-pitched and dramatic, enough to draw attention. "Shelley, this is the 3rd plate of food you've sent back," Ainsley said in a sickly sweet tone.
"You don't expect me to pay for something I don't want, do you?"
Ainsley suddenly stiffened, which told Presley that her twin was seeing something she didn't like. "Come on, Ainsley. Do I have to fight all your battles? All you have to do is kick that sorry piece of work out." Deciding that her sister needed support, Presley walked over to the table and saw that Ainsley was about to reach for her perfectly fine plate of food in front of Shelley. Presley knocked her twin's hand away, disgusted by the wasteful behavior. Hell, the food looked half decent, the cheese oozing from the sides of the sandwich. Due to an unfortunate situation, Presley was in between jobs, so she lived on ramen noodles and frozen burritos. Ainsley stiffened when she noticed her presence. Well, that was a total ego crusher. Ainsley's eyes traveled up and down her form, no doubt recognizing the oversized t-shirt, leggings, and chucks. "Pray, what are you doing here?" "Oh, come on. Didn't you miss me, sis?" Ainsley's eye roll answered the question clear enough. But still, a little appreciation would have been nice. Deciding it was better to get the show started, Presley pulled her iPhone out of her purse. It was the only item she hadn't stolen from her twin since Ainsley's purse was falling apart. She clicked on the picture that Carrie took and clicked share. She chose Instagram and tagged every one of those shrews at the table. Deciding that the caption was almost certainly not necessary, she pressed post and smirked when the chorus of dings filled the air. Presley grinned maniacally, then snatched up the sandwich on Shelley's plate and took a big bite. Shelley rolled her eyes and tapped on her phone. There was an awkward moment where everyone was engrossed in their phones. Patrick's girlfriend slammed the phone down and looked at Ainsley with hatred.
"You desperate cow!"
Shelley shouted before tossing the contents of her Shirley Temple in Ainsley's face.
Oh, crap. Maybe I didn't think this one through,
Presley thought to herself. Her twin jerked back, surprised by the move, shivering from the cold liquid hitting her body. "What the hell is your problem?" Ainsley snapped at the annoying shrew.
"I don't like skanks,"
Shelley replied. Presley wasn't going to let this insult go. She was itching to pull out every strand of Shelley's bleached blonde hair. "My sister isn't a skank. You're the one that broke girl code and went after another woman's property," Presley said.
"Maybe your sister wasn't exciting enough for him. Didn't you think about that?"
Poor pathetic Shelley would be discarded when she was no longer useful to her self-serving boyfriend. Presley decided to knock at the shrew's confidence. "Maybe you're not exciting enough for him. Patrick wanted her back. Believe me, it didn't take much convincing for him to consider making things work with Ainsley. What can I say? Patrick loves predictability." Ainsley scowled. "Why don't you leave, Shelley?" Shelley got to her feet and flipped Ainsley the bird. That piece of garbage was going to get it. Presley dove for Shelley and yanked her out of the booth. "Look on the bright side. You'll have some downtime before you find another job," Presley said, a mile into their 3-mile walk back to the trailer they shared. It was 40 degrees outside, and Presley longed for her warm sweater every time the wind picked up. Ainsley wiped at her face, which was still sticky from the Shirley Temple that the harlot threw at her. "Since you got fired from the movie theater because you keyed Patrick's car, none of us have any money." So typical. Ainsley didn't acknowledge that her twin had only been trying to make the couple hurt as much as she was. "How did you want me to react when those two went in there? As if they were the ones in the right? Patrick had only dumped you 2 days before, and that pissed me off." "I expected you to do nothing, Presley. Adults move on to new relationships. We aren't 15 anymore."
"We aren't 30 either,"
Presley quipped.
"Why are you wearing my clothes, pray?"
Damn. Presley knew that her sister wasn't going to be happy with her.
"Well, you see, what happened was..."
Ainsley stopped walking and shot her a scowl that made her groan.
"I wanted to prove to Shelley that she was nothing more than a side chick."
"What did you do, Presley?" Presley decided the only way to proceed was to remind her sister how important she was to her. Everyone knew she loved hard and didn't take her loved ones for granted.
"Ain, you know I love you. You're my twin, my bestie, my ride or die. I couldn't just let that woman harass you. I wanted to humiliate her. So I went to Patrick's apartment dressed like you. I filmed him begging for you back. One of my friends took a picture of us kissing, and I uploaded the picture on Instagram and tagged Shelley and her stupid friends. Don't worry, Ain. I let Patrick know that I wasn't you. You should have seen his face."
"Great. And now what?" Ainsley's perplexed expression told her that a thank you wasn't in the cards anytime soon.
"Now, those two break up and Shelley crawls into a hole and never shows her face again."
It wasn't enough for you to get the creep to cheat on his girlfriend. You had to post the evidence on social media? Pre, we aren't ever working in this town again. You know that, right? So then we'll leave, Presley replied, the idea fueling her imagination. She pictured the two of them escaping this small, miserable town and starting fresh. She'd miss her best friends, Carrie and Yolanda, but they also hated this town, so maybe they would join Presley on her adventure. Right, like it's easy to pick up and leave. Thanks to the fact that you totaled our last car, we have next to nothing in our accounts. It wasn't my fault. A deer just popped out of nowhere. Ain, trust me, I'll fix this. I'll find a way for us. Ainsley looked doubtful, but that was okay. Her sister always played things safe. She wasn't the type of person to think outside the box. Let's just see if we can get a job cleaning houses, Ainsley said, defeat in every word. Don't you worry, Ain. You won't be cleaning houses. I'm going to find us a way out of here. Chapter 2. The next morning, someone pounded on the trailer door. Presley stumbled out of her twin bed and slid into the robe resting on a rickety dresser. She didn't want to answer the door in boy shorts and a tank top. The space heater she used kept her room overly toasty. She rushed to open the door, expecting an MLM hun to try and tell her something. Zach Moore, the owner of the trailer park, stood there, a scowl on his face. He usually had a smile for everyone.
My brother told me what you did.
If this annoying man was going to give Presley a lecture, she would pretend to listen, say sorry, then go back to bed. It was 8 a.m., 2 hours before she bothered waking up. Since Presley had lost her job at the movie theater, she was determined to enjoy her responsibility-free days. Something would turn up eventually. She was sure of it. Ainsley was overdramatic about them not being able to find jobs. Presley's plan was to work, save, and move as far away as possible. You mean my fight with Shelley?
Ms. Smith, I've gotten 10 complaints about you in the last hour.
I've been kind to everyone in the trailer park. As far as I know, I have no enemies. Who filed the complaints? Zach wiped a meaty hand on the leg of his paint-stained jeans.
The Ashmores, Harringtons, and the Campbells are some of the people who insist that you should be punished for what you did to Shelley.
Mr. Moore's revelation caused her heart rate to pick up. He listed 3 of the wealthiest families in town. I'm about to become a victim of vigilante justice. Why isn't the deputy at my door?
Because Shelley tossed a drink at Ainsley. Witnesses have confirmed that, along with her unseemly behavior. Look, my hands are tied. They want you punished, and they're looking for me to do something. Sell your trailer and get the hell out of here. I even buy it from you.
What?
You have 2 months to vacate my property, Miss Smith. I don't need the trouble that will come continuing to rent with you.
What a coward. He couldn't stand up to the rich and powerful. Instead, he was allowing 2 women to lose the roof over their heads. Did anyone want to fight for her? Presley wouldn't have been surprised since her own sister hadn't lifted a finger to defend her in the past. Why should a virtual stranger? Fine. I'll get out of this stupid town. Presley was sure she could think of something. She would just need to do some research. Presley placed the buffalo chicken wings on the chipped kitchen table, along with a bottle of Cabernet, Yolanda's favorite. The battered laptop that Carrie let her borrow was cradled against her chest, as if it would give her strength to take such a risk. The front door opened, and Carrie, who held a pan of brownies, stumbled in, followed by Yolanda, who was holding the platter of mac and cheese. "Hey, y'all, I have something to show you," Presley announced.
Where's Ainsley?
Carrie wondered as she placed her pan of brownies beside the wings. Yolanda shook her head. "She doesn't want to hang out with us. You know that, Carrie." "My twin is an introvert. She has nothing against you two. She's going through a breakup," Presley insisted. Yolanda, a tall, stunning woman with chocolate brown skin and shoulder-length microlocks, didn't look convinced. Ainsley could be a little self-centered at times, not taking interest in Presley's life, but that was okay. At least her sister stayed. Presley couldn't say the same for her horrid parents. Ainsley's out looking for a job, but I know it's hopeless. Yolanda scowled. Because you kicked that prissy chick's butt? After she put her contribution on the table, Yolanda fished 3 coffee mugs out of the cabinet and poured the wine. Presley didn't explain her reason for the spontaneous lunch date until the 3 friends were sitting side by side on the worn couch, sipping their wine. Ladies, I found a way for us to get the hell out of here.
I don't have the coordination to join the military,
Carrie piped up. Not the military. I'm not brave enough for that. I think we should sign up for a mail-order bride service, Presley announced. Carrie frowned.
How does that work? Do we have to be interviewed?
We have to fill out questionnaires and provide a DNA sample. They don't want to accidentally match us to a long-lost cousin. After that, we'll be contacted by our matchmaker and flown to a location to marry a man. Yolanda shook her head. I don't want to marry a stranger. Carrie lowered her eyes.
After the fiasco with Travis, who called me Clumsy Carrie, I'm thinking it's the only way for me to find a husband.
Travis was a jerk. You'll find someone, Yolanda said with the conviction of someone who believed her best friend's worth. To be honest, Yolanda's the only one who could get a date in this miserable town. Thanks to my mother, everyone thinks Ainsley and I are trash. Carrie can't get past the Clumsy Carrie nickname, and my sister can't find a job. We need to take a chance. Presley could see when her reasoning started to turn Yolanda's uncertainty into interest. How much does this thing cost? Yolanda asked. Presley smiled in triumph. Nothing for you two. I paid the fee and got the kits for everyone. All we need to do is fill it out and mail them back.
Ainsley's okay with this?
Carrie asked, a skeptical expression on her face. Nerves filled Presley's gut. I'm going to fill hers out for her. Hopefully we'll be placed at the same time. Yolanda sighed. I'll do it. My parents will be pissed. A week after Presley mailed out 4 applications to the mail-order bride service, the burner phone she purchased rang. It was deceitful, but there was no way around it. Ainsley couldn't know about her sister's stunt until she had no chance of getting out of it. When Presley filled out her sister's application, she put down the burner number as a way to contact Ainsley. Presley closed the door of her bedroom and cleared her throat. Ainsley's voice was a tiny bit deeper than Presley's. Hello, Ainsley speaking, Presley said as soon as the flip phone was pressed to her ear. Hi, Ainsley. I'm Cassandra Hall, a matchmaker from the Portum Mail Order Bride Service. Is this a good time to talk? Presley plopped down on her bed. Of course. I have a match for you. His name is Kevin Taylor. He lives off the coast of Florida. We can fly you out there this weekend if you're interested. Of course, my twin Presley also signed up. Did you find a match for her? Presley asked in a voice that didn't reveal her excitement. Yes, I'm planning on speaking to her soon. If she agrees, you'll both be on the same flight, Cassandra explained. I'm interested in marrying Kevin Taylor, she replied, her heart dancing at the prospect of escaping the judgmental townspeople. Glad to hear it. I'll send the itinerary to your email address. They spoke for a couple of minutes, making arrangements involving a wedding dress rental. Then Presley was off the phone. Not 20 seconds later, the matchmaker called her own cell phone and revealed that she'd be marrying Paul Sharon. After going through the same song and dance with Cassandra, Presley stretched out on her bed. She imagined her life in Florida. She'd finally have a serious relationship with someone who treasured her. Presley was sure that Paul was somebody that was craving company of a wife. Surely he'd want to travel the world with a companion and live life to its fullest. Presley's life was looking up. Chapter 3. Saturday came too slowly in Presley's opinion. She had gotten 2 suitcases for a steal at the thrift shop. She didn't care that they could barely zip. They were for function, not fashion. Presley had packed her suitcase the night before. She dragged the empty large suitcase into the hallway.
Should I go in with the luggage or work my way up to giving Ainsley the news? Ainsley's a planner who wants everything her way. She'll hate it that I've made a major decision without her. Yep, leave the luggage in the hall for now,
Presley told herself. She took a deep breath and burst into Ainsley's neat room and decided to approach this situation with false cheer. "Sis, wake up," Presley said before plopping down on the edge of her bed. Ainsley's red-rimmed eyes opened, her face lined with fatigue. She yawned. "Why? Did you burn something?" "No. Our driver is coming in 5 hours. Time's a-wastin'."
"Driver? Here goes nothing."
Presley took a deep breath and straightened. "Look, Ain, I told you I'd get us out of here. I came up with a solution."
"And what would that be?"
"Well," Presley could only generate an unauthentic smile, which her twin saw right through. "I sort of signed us up for a mail-order bride agency. We're going to Florida to marry 2 men. Ainsley shot Presley a surprised expression.
"Is this a prank?"
"No, you're marrying some guy named Kevin, and I'm marrying Paul. According to Cassandra, our matchmaker coordinator, both men will be able to provide for us."
"We aren't marrying strangers,"
Ainsley protested. "I'm marrying Paul. Either you come with me or you stay here and struggle to get a job." Ainsley looked like she was about to strangle her, which was promising. At least her twin was still in the room.
"Bree, why don't you think about it? We can't go to some random town and marry strangers. We have nothing to our names. If the men are dangerous, we'll be stuck there.
I'm not stupid, Ain. I read testimonials. Trust me, this is our only option, unless you want to try moving with limited funds."
"I didn't agree to this. I don't have to marry this man."
"I sort of forged your signature on a contract. Your husband thinks you're coming."
"I'm not."
"Just go along with it, Ain. It's gonna work." Ainsley stood and eyed the small but cozy room she had lived in for 3 months. Presley wasn't sure what she saw. The room had peeling pink wallpaper, a water-stained carpet, and a squeaky bed. She wanted to roll her eyes when Ainsley brushed a tear away.
"You're only giving me a couple of hours to say goodbye to our home?"
Guilt momentarily filled Presley's heart. She knew she was putting Ainsley in a difficult position, but she never would have agreed to sign up for this mail-order bride service if Presley had approached her with the idea. After sending the applications, Carrie and Yolanda weren't even sold, and they were risk-takers. "Well, I didn't think that through." Presley wasn't proud of it, but she glanced away after speaking to her sad sister. She had been hiding something else. This trailer had already been sold. "Don't you worry, Ain. We'll come back to Virginia if you want."
"Mom only has this address."
Presley got to her feet. "I couldn't care less about some useless postcards. She left us with a paid-off trailer and nothing else." She despised her parents for abandoning them 7 years ago. But Ainsley foolishly forgave them. Her mother, Kim, delivered the twins 2 days before her 16th birthday. She spent her teenage years taking care of them. Their father, Matt, married her for the good of the children, but the couple divorced and went their separate ways when the twins turned 18. "I'll call the post office to see if they can have our mail forwarded." Presley shrugged and left the room. She returned moments later, wheeling in the massive, scratched-up suitcase. "I bought this at the thrift store." Ainsley's brow arched. She probably didn't think that packing was necessary. Knowing Ainsley, she'd tried to wiggle out of the marriage. Great. Now it was time to play the risky hand. You should grab what you can. I sold the trailer. Presley Ann Smith, tell me you're lying, Ainsley cried. Because Presley's parents were convinced that she wouldn't amount to anything, they put the trailer in her name.
Ainsley's going places. I'm sure she'll figure out a way to pay for college. You're more like us,
Kim Smith had said years ago. Presley's only response was to flip the woman off. She was nothing like those people. She was loyal and supported the people she loved. Get packing, Presley sang, then left the room. After a magnificent plane ride, where Cassandra explained that they were heading to Portum Island, Presley and her skeptical twin were lounging on the deck of a yacht. Presley was a bit overheated in her leggings and blew off the shoulder short-sleeve top. Ainsley managed to lighten up and stripped out of her hideous baggy sweater. She could never understand why her sister insisting on hiding her assets away.
I should have worn a bikini,
Presley thought to herself. She was roasting, with sweat oozing from her pores, destroying her lightly applied makeup. For once, she had actually read an itinerary, and traveling on a yacht wasn't included in the details. She would warn Carrie and Yolanda that Cassandra wasn't as organized as she seemed. Her eyes snagged on the cooler of untouched food and drinks. She was too hot to eat, but she needed to pass the time somehow, so she pulled her phone out of her purse and began snapping selfies that she sent to her group chat. Carrie replied,
You're still alive? In paradise. Guys, when you come to Portum Island, bring a swimsuit. I searched for Portum Island and found nothing. You'll have to take pics for us. Will do.
Ladies, I have something to explain, Cassandra said. Presley took one more selfie and glanced at the matchmaker.
My husband is a 90-year-old guy, isn't he?
Presley asked, dread lingering in her heart. Cassandra shook her head. I wanted to talk to you both about Portum Island. It isn't well known.
I'm not good with geography. Is Portum Island part of the U.S.? Let's do an Instagram Live. We can educate my followers.
Yes, an Instagram Live would work, so Cassandra could explain why Carrie was unable to find Portum Island on the web. No Instagram Live. This island's existence is a secret. Oh, hell no. This was the beginning of a horror story. Presley knew it.
Yeah, right. Everything is online. It would be hard to hide an island, Presley argued.
Tell us about Portum Island, Ainsley reluctantly encouraged. She wrung her hands, a tell that told Presley that her twin was starting to get anxious. That was a relief, since her twin would conquer her anxiety by planning. Good. She could get them both out of this mess. Ainsley was the smart, reliable one. But if she couldn't do it, Presley would be sure to use the only weapon she had, social media.
Here's a better question. Why can't I film your explanation? What are you hiding?
Presley's question only caused Ainsley to shoot her a will you shut up expression. Either the control freak already thought up a plan of escape, or she didn't see how recording them could help the situation. Since Ainsley was more of a book person, Presley was thinking that it was the latter. Social media is the least of our worries. The stranger is telling us that Portum Island is a secret island. I'm assuming it's exclusive. Let me guess, only rich people can live there?
No, you're missing the point, Ain. Why does Cassandra have a problem with me going on Instagram Live? Wouldn't exposure be good for her business?
I think the better idea is for you to see the island for yourself, Cassandra decided.
Why not tell us about the island? Presley demanded.
Ainsley shook her head as if saying, You blew it, Pre. She isn't going to tell us anything. Whether it was a good thing or not remained to be seen. It was just unfortunate that it took 45 minutes for the secret to be revealed. The sun vanished from the sky, taking its heat with it. It was as if the yacht was traveling through a tunnel constructed of darkness. Ainsley and Presley screamed, Presley's hands desperately reaching out for her twins. She found her sister's wrist, and electricity danced over her skin. Then the darkness faded, and the electricity vanished. "What the hell?" Presley screamed, her grip tightening on Ainsley's wrist. "Sorry, Presley. I couldn't let you film this. Portum Island is special. Only certain people can pass through its barrier. That's why your application required a DNA sample." "Right. Only I would stumble up on a freaking magical island." Presley pinched herself just to make sure she wasn't stuck in one of those whimsical dreams. "You aren't vampires or zombies, are you?" Presley squeaked out. She needed to determine if she was at the bottom of the food chain. Ainsley shot Presley a confused expression. Cassandra laughed. "No, we're humans that live on a special island. The barrier that surrounds the island keeps us healthy, and we age slower than non-islanders." Presley's eyes grew wide with surprise. If Cassandra was telling the truth, she would age slower. She could live a long life while being surrounded by people she loved. Yolanda, Carrie, and Presley had each other, and Yolanda's crazy parents, and Carrie's older brother Simon. Was there a way to get all those people on this magical island? "Can we leave?" Ainsley asked. Of course her controlling sister would want to know such a thing. She didn't have the ability to appreciate life. "If things don't work out with your husband, you can return to the mainland," Cassandra assured. If this aging thing was true, there was no way in hell Presley would allow her stubborn sister to leave. Despite how closed off Ainsley was, she was still one of Presley's favorite people. Chapter 4. Sal Carter cursed his luck when he walked into the processing center with his brother Kendrick. Neither man was in the mood for confrontation, but it looked like they were about to have one. Their Aunt Rosa, a tall, willowy woman with bone-straight, shoulder-length brown hair, stepped in front of the cart that Sal was pushing. His aunt greeted him with a scowl. "Salvador, why haven't you answered any of my letters?" "Because it isn't the 17th century, Aunt Rosa. If you want to speak to me, you can call or text me," Sal said in his usual dry tone. Kendrick laughed. "Aunt Rosa, you not only knew Leslie was trying to sell our home, but you also knew who Jill's birth parents were. Until you apologize to Jill, neither one of us will communicate with you." The woman let out an annoyed huff. "I should be angry. You cost me millions. You don't see me holding a grudge."
"Sal, do you mind grabbing this for the groom?"
Cal David, one of the employees, shouted. Sal left the cart with Kendrick and walked over to the station where his friend stood. He had 2 bulging bags of food on the table. "Did Kevin really order this?" Cal grinned.
"He did, but he isn't supposed to pick it up till Monday. His shipment's early."
Cal was an easygoing man who tended to protect his friends from awkward situations. Kendrick could handle their cranky aunt better than he ever could, and the other man knew it. He took his friend's groceries off the counter and left the processing center, shooting his brother an apologetic look on the way out. The walk to Kevin's house took 10 minutes. Sal tried his best to nod at the people who waved at him, but he couldn't help but despise the islanders who failed to see the good in the orphans he made it his life mission to care for. They were selfish, critical, and loved to gossip about Jill's failings, but very few ever thought to lend a hand. By the time he made it to Kendrick's spacious one-story, Sal craved the solitude of his friend's kitchen. Kevin opened the door, looking overwhelmed. Did his bride arrive already? "Grab the groceries for you," Sal told him. A light lit in Kevin's eyes as if something just occurred to him. He shot Sal a hopeful expression. "Thanks." He stepped aside and allowed him to go inside. Sal gave Paul Morris and Emily Blackhall a nod on his way to the kitchen. He was sure Kevin would tell him why his future sister-in-law's groom was standing there with his ex-girlfriend. Sal had a feeling that Emily was about to bring drama to the day. Knowing that he couldn't abandon his friend in need, Sal put the groceries on the kitchen table, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and plopped down on one of the wooden kitchen chairs. Kevin entered the kitchen, a troubled expression on his face. He began putting his groceries away, his posture stiffening the longer he worked. Something was clearly upsetting the guy. Paul backed out of marrying Presley, Kevin blurted out. Kevin turned just in time to see Sal's horribly messy spit take. He couldn't help the reaction. He expected Kevin to tell him his bride ran off. He owed Cassandra Hall a balance, or that Emily wanted to attend the wedding. No way in hell did Paul backing out of his wedding come to mind. The waiting list for the mail-order bride service was a mile long. Unless... Emily? Yeah, I think Mary Blackhawk is behind this. She would love it if one of Cassandra's brides was sent packing.
It's more like the shrew can't stand the fact that Paul chose a stranger over her daughter,
Sal thought to himself. Now what? Now you take Paul's place. This guy had to be kidding. Sal shook his head. I'm not ready for a bride. If he was being honest with himself, he had no desire to get married. His life had been mapped out: live at the orphanage with Jill and provide a stable home for abandoned children. It's been 20 years since Laura. Why the hell did Kevin have to go and bring up his ex-wife? I'd rather not marry a stranger, Kevin. Besides, whoever I marry will have to be okay with living at the orphanage. I won't force Jill to run the orphanage alone. Before Sal could tell Kevin to drop the conversation, the door collided with the wall, and Tessa and her husband, Thomas, entered the kitchen. Feed me, I'm hungry, Tessa pleaded. She practically dragged her husband to the kitchen table, where they both took seats. Sal was relieved to see the happy couple. Hopefully, they would serve as a good distraction. Once Tessa took control of the conversation, Sal would lie, say he forgot something at the orphanage, and never come back. The last thing he needed was to be there when Cassandra heard the news. She might be desperate enough to insist that Sal marry Paul's bride. You could have knocked. You could have knocked last weekend. Thomas and I were...
Sonny,
Thomas shouted, dismayed by his wife's habit of oversharing. Tessa flicked a dismissive hand. What? We're married, Tom. Why do you care if I tell Kevin stories of the sensual variety? Thomas blushed.
It isn't necessary for Mr. Taylor to know what we get up to, Sonny.
It's Kevin. You're friends. It's normal to call them by their first name, Tessa insisted. Are Kendrick and Julia coming? Kevin asked. Damn, his friend would circle back to the topic. Sal just knew it. Sal shook his head. Layla has a cold.
Before my wife interrupted the two of you, what crisis were you trying to solve?
Damn it to hell. Thomas was too observant. Paul backed out of marrying Presley. He thinks I should marry her instead, Sal summarized. Tessa's face lit up. Maybe this is a good thing. Presley can pick her own husband. We'd have to do some kind of speed dating event so she could narrow the choices down. Sal loved how the woman thought.
Sonny, no husband means no citizenship on Portum Island,
Thomas gently told his wife. Tessa groaned. Sal, why don't you marry Presley and see how it goes? You can get rid of her if she annoys you. He mentally took back his compliment. Sal shook his head. I have one divorce under my belt. I don't need another one. A painful memory drifted to him. Sal stormed into the crowded orphanage lobby, a crumpled-up letter in his hands. His throat was tight, his hands shaking. Jill was breaking up a squabble that the twin boys were having over an action figure. Kendrick sat behind the reception desk chatting with Thomas, who had a bulging duffel bag by his foot. Laura was nowhere to be found. Out of desperation, Sal bolted out of the door and ignored the oppressive heat. He jogged down the sidewalk and chased after a mop of black hair that he had spotted in the distance. "Laura!" Sal shouted. The woman that he loved stopped walking. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with guilt. "I got your letter."
Sal, I have nothing to say to you. I'm sorry. I'm not happy at the orphanage and you refuse to move out of it.
"So you got pregnant by another man? You know those people won't accept your baby, right?" Guilt entered Laura's eyes.
Sal, could you forgive me and raise this baby as your own?
Dread turned his gut. There was no way getting around telling the truth. "No."
Then I have to do what's best for me. Blair Clifford be damned. Her husband is the father of my baby, and he'll pay to support us. I'm sorry I can't give you what you want.
"All I wanted was your love and loyalty. Why did you do this?" Payne was boiling into hot anger. He lost his parents and now his wife?
I'm living my life for me. I hope you do the same.
Sal pulled himself from the memory. He'd never gamble on love again. He couldn't suffer the misery that would come after she left. Chapter 5. The doorbell rang, which caused an expletive to fly from Kevin's mouth. He obviously wasn't ready to give Cassandra the bad news. Sal felt for his friend. He really did. But he wasn't going to marry a stranger to save his friend from awkwardness.
"Why don't you consider marrying Miss Smith? You'd have a companion."
Thomas cut in.
"What if Ainsley decides not to marry Kevin? Then he'll be hard to deal with,"
Tessa argued. His best friend was sensitive, and he would see Ainsley leaving him as a personal attack. But that wasn't a good reason to get hitched again. A thoughtful expression appeared on Thomas's face.
"I'm sure Miss Smith will also be a help to Miss Carver."
Sal thought of Jill and how worn out she was. Another pair of hands would make his sister's life easier.
It won't hurt to feel her out. If Presley's spoiled and doesn't look useful, I don't have to marry her,
Sal thought. He got to his feet and quietly made his way to the front door. "Hey, Cassandra," Kevin greeted. He ushered Cassandra and two gorgeous women into the house. The twins sighed in relief when the central air hit their skin. "Which one of you is Ainsley?" The woman with her hair in a messy bun raised her hand. "Where's Paul?" Presley asked. Her excited voice caused dread to fill Sal's heart. It was obvious that the poor woman had been looking forward to getting married. Why did she need to be a mail-order bride? Presley was stunning, with green eyes, long, luscious hair, and assets Sal could admire for days. She must have been in some kind of trouble. That was it. Presley and her sister took the chance on Cassandra's mail-order bride service because they were running from something. And one thing Sal couldn't do was turn his back on someone in need. He was confident that she was desperate enough to accept his terms. He'd have to figure out the best way to present his proposal. "You're actually marrying me. My name is Sal," he said, his conviction growing the more he watched the stranger. Cassandra frowned. "Where's Paul?" "He decided to get back with Emily. I'm happy to take his place." Happy was the wrong word, but he couldn't very well say, "I'd be thrilled to enter a marriage of convenience." Ainsley scowled. "We didn't sign up for musical grooms. My sister came here to marry Paul Sharon. She didn't sign up for a replacement. It's cool, Ain. I like my replacement," Presley said. She pushed past her twin and walked over to Sal and wrapped her arms around him. He stiffened for a moment before her scent reached his nose. She smelled like a mixture of vanilla and the beach. Her body was warm and plump. His mind shorted out when Presley's lips captured his Her kiss was passionate. Her lips took over Sal's senses, and he found himself responding, his tongue dipping into her sweet mouth. When Presley broke the kiss, he was too stunned to say a word.
"Don't you worry, Sal. You won't regret your choice,"
Presley whispered before being whisked away by Cassandra and her twin. Presley was about to have a heart attack. Of course, she'd be the one with the groom that ditched her at the altar. Sal was a more than adequate replacement and a fine kisser. But he was marrying her out of pity. Why else would a man offer to marry a jilted woman? Presley read the fine print before signing the marriage contract. She'd be shipped back to Virginia if she didn't go through with the wedding. Her nerves and stress twisted her stomach so badly. For the first 20 minutes, she just stood there in front of the vanity, trying to come to terms with her predicament. "Presley, how are you coming along in there?" Cassandra asked. The matchmaker's voice lit a fire under her butt. She stripped out of her sweat-stained clothes and turned on the shower.
"It's going."
When the water warmed, she stepped underneath the spray and took deep breaths.
"Okay, Presley, you have to make this marriage work. You have nowhere to go. You don't want to get separated from your twin. Carrie and Yolanda will be placed with grooms. You can't ruin a good opportunity for them. You need to be positive. Hope that you can win Sal over. How hard can that be?"
By the time Presley was finished giving herself a mental pep talk, the water was frigid. She got out of the shower and wrapped up a fluffy blue towel around her body before stepping into the room. Ainsley was already dressed, her blonde hair hanging in waves down her back. Her makeup was minimal, and she kept on tugging at the front of her dress. She was stunning.
"Sis, you look great," Presley gasped out.
Ainsley scowled.
"What took you so long?"
Presley couldn't very well tell her sister that she spent the last hour and some change giving herself a mental pep talk. Instead, she grinned.
"There's a science to this, Ain. One doesn't just shove their wedding dress on. A bride needs to pamper themselves, put on lotion, blow dry their hair, paint their nails, do their makeup. Then can the dress be worn."
She was feeding her exasperated sister a load of crap. It was better than admitting the truth. If Presley expressed her doubts and fears, Ainsley would latch onto the opening and argue that they should return to Virginia. Ainsley rolled her eyes and gestured to the blow dryer that was on the dresser. "Go on. Get to work." Presley focused on not tripping as she walked down the concrete steps that led to her future brother-in-law's backyard. The setup was wonderful. Okay, fine. It wasn't the kind of wedding that the rich back home strive to throw, but Kevin had put effort into it. There were tents and rows of chairs separated by a makeshift aisle. People were dressed in their Sunday best. A man with dark hair was grilling. The smell of food made her stomach rumble. She'd have to get through the wedding first before gorging herself on delicious barbecue. Her groom was dressed in a suit that looked a bit loose on the shoulders. He shifted from foot to foot as if impatient to get the ceremony over with. When Presley walked over to him, his dark eyes traveled up and down her body. Then he stiffened and shook his head.
"What the hell?"
Her mouth opened, questions about to spew out, but then a middle-aged reverend began the ceremony.
"You may kiss the bride, gentlemen,"
Reverend Adams declared 15 minutes later. Recalling her plan to smother Sal with so much affection that he would be glad of their union, Presley wrapped her arms around her man and kissed him for the second time. His tongue surged into her mouth, their passion nearly causing her to combust. She enjoyed being in Sal's arms, glad that they had chemistry.
"Get a room!"
a woman shouted. Presley remained kissing her delectable groom for a couple more seconds before he broke their kiss.
"Let's get some food,"
he breathlessly said.
Sounds good. I'm starved. Since the dress was kind of constricting, Presley opted for some chicken and potato salad, while her husband only grabbed a water and a roll. Presley frowned, but didn't comment on his lack of interest in the food. Sal led her to a table with a friendly-looking woman with a baby bump. After taking their seats, the redhead smiled at them.
Hi, Presley. I'm Tessa. I was also a mail-order bride. Cassandra thought it would be helpful if I befriended you.
So you wouldn't have befriended me otherwise? Presley asked, confused and kind of offended. Tessa rubbed her forehead.
Of course I would have befriended you, since you have a winning personality. Anyway, I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Presley decided to shove her unease aside. What's the job market like? Tessa frowned.
Job market?
Yes, I'm hoping to save up to buy more clothes. I could use a few new things and...
You aren't going to get a job. Your place is with my sister and me.
Your sister? Presley squeaked.
Yes, Jill is expecting me soon. We'll have to hurry.
Jill's your sister, right? Presley held her breath, hoping that her new husband didn't have a mistress.
Yes, and she'll be needing our assistance tonight.
But it's our...
Presley, the schedule allotted me an amount of time to spend here. It wouldn't be fair to my siblings if we're late.
This living arrangement is temporary, right?
No, let's go.
But I'm not done with my food.
We'll eat when we get home, Sal said.
Presley, it doesn't matter how hot this man is. He's a jerk, and you can't possibly stay married to him. Ainsley will know how to fix this.
Presley stormed over to her sister, who was in deep conversation with a stunning brunette. Sal wants us to leave. He says we spent too much time here. He's blaming me for the fact that I can't stay at our reception. You did take 2 hours to get ready, Pre. Of course, Miss Straight-Laced would take Sal's side. I didn't tell you the worst part. Sal he lives with his family and refuses to move out. Tessa joined the conversation.
Esperanza, when I asked to mentor someone, I said I'd like someone that I could drink with, right? I swear this one's gonna drive me to drink.
Presley was about to lose her temper. Does your husband want to live with his siblings? Presley shot back at the aggravating woman.
No, my husband's brother tried to kill him, so that would never happen. And that's not what Sal meant. He runs an orphanage with his siblings. He'd never leave the kids.
Presley frowned. Well, this is perfect. I'm not the mothering type, but I suppose I'll give it a shot. Ainsley got to her feet and wrapped her in a hug. You'll be great, Pre. Just be yourself. Ainsley's whispered encouragement made Presley relax. Her sister didn't make a habit of offering false reassurances. You'll visit? Of course, Ainsley replied. Presley released her twin and forced herself to swallow humble pie. She sure embarrassed herself, and now she'd have to apologize to Sal. She hated apologizing. Chapter 6. Are you going to talk to me? Presley asked Sal 5 minutes into their walk. Sal rubbed his forehead, a headache beginning to trouble him. Guilt trickled into his gut at the memory of their fight. His new wife believed they had potential to create a life together. He foolishly gave in to his desires and ravished her mouth. The temptation to kiss her lips was strong, but that was a horrid idea. Sal would set things straight with Presley.
I should tell you about the orphanage.
That would be a start. How many children are there in the orphanage?
We currently have 18 children.
Presley bit her lip. And you're understaffed?
We're always understaffed. That's why I married you. I figured that you'd be able to lend a hand.
Perhaps he worded that confession a bit too harshly, because his bride's face fell. You don't really want a real marriage?
Why did you become a mail-order bride?
It was best to dodge her question. What does that have to do with anything? Do you want to be with me or not? The anger that began sparking from her green eyes intensified the urge to placate her. Part of Sal wished he could offer the beautiful, passionate woman a real marriage.
Presley, can't you just answer the question?
Fine. I signed up to be a mail-order bride because it was my best option. My sister and I needed to leave Virginia, and neither of us had any money to move. Good. At heart, Presley married Sal because she was a survivor. He could work with this.
I agreed to marry you for a couple of reasons. The first one being that I could use the help around the orphanage. We're understaffed, and my sister Jill is running herself ragged. When Kevin told me that you needed a husband, I realized you would be a good addition to the orphanage.
What made you think that? You hadn't even met me yet. This firecracker was going to make him spell it out? Sal wished that Presley would have caught wind of his intentions without having him explain them.
Presley, I figured we could help one another. You need a place to stay. I need help in the orphanage.
So I'll be an employee, not a wife?
Kind of.
Presley sighed. You do know I don't have any experience with kids. You should have interviewed me before you married me.
Presley,
Seriously, Karma is a witch. Ainsley meets someone and he's head over heels for her. But my guy can't even stay. Nope, he ditches me at the altar without the courtesy of explaining things to me. Then my replacement groom doesn't want a wife. He wants an employee. In order for me to become a citizen of Portum Island, I have to stay married for 6 months. Presley stopped speaking for a moment. Then a resigned expression crossed her face. All right, I can make this work.
Make what work?
Sal asked, dread filling his heart. I'll stay married to you in name only for 6 months. Once I become a citizen, we'll divorce. I'll ask Cassandra for another match.
Presley, I didn't say.
It's fine. You saved me from being tossed back to Virginia, and I'm thankful for that. I'm not sure what I can do to help Jill, but I'll try my best. I just want to know if I'll have time to look for a job.
No, you'll get a stipend for helping out at the orphanage,
Sal explained, his chest tightening. He wasn't sure what he wanted, but another failed marriage wasn't it. May not be enough if I have to save for my future on Portum Island. He was grateful when they turned left and they arrived at their destination. Sal brought his new bride into the reception area of the orphanage. Jill was sitting behind the desk, her expression twisted in annoyance. The sound of an irate female voice could be heard from where he stood. Only one woman yelled at this kind-hearted sister like that, Aunt Rosa. Not too long ago, there had been a dispute about the building that held the orphanage, and she was angry she was at the losing end of it. Sal left his bride standing there and stormed behind the desk. He took the phone and pressed it to his ear. You will go to my barbecue without the hellions. I suggest you send your children off to camp or something. I'm tired of you never being present in our family, Jill.
Aunt Rosa, I'm hanging up now,
Sal said before slamming the phone down. Jill sighed in relief. Thanks. Despite what she did, I don't have the heart to hang up on her.
It's all right. I have some exciting news.
Sal attempted to be thrilled. After all, it was the answer to their problems, he hoped. What is it? Jill asked. Sal gestured to his bride.
Meet my wife, Presley.
Jill frowned. Your wife? Why wasn't I invited to your wedding?
Because it was last minute. Paul backed out of marrying Presley and I offered to take his place.
You willingly got married again? You should. Sal felt horribly about what he was going to do, but he needed to create the employer-employee relationship that Presley desired. Presley, come over here, Sal insisted. His bride nervously approached, a blush coloring her pale cheeks. She was beautiful. He couldn't deny that. Hi, Jill. It's nice to meet you. I'm Presley, and I'm excited about helping however I can, she said. Sal supposed that she had no choice but to act enthusiastic, since this would be her home for the foreseeable future. Nice to meet you as well. I'm so excited that Sal got married. We should plan a party to... No. The last thing Jill needed was to take on another project. She already had enough on her shoulders. Jill, can you give Presley a brief tour and assign her something to do? Sal asked. Now? Sal, His harsh expression caused Presley to stop speaking. You want to pull your own weight, right? Sal demanded. For a reason he couldn't understand, he was annoyed with his wife. Yes, Presley said. Then it starts now. I'll bring your things up to room 320, he said before walking off. And this is where you'll be sleeping, Jill said an hour later. Presley's entire body ached from the crapshoot that was her wedding day. She went from being excited about marrying Paul to feeling cold. Sal wasn't willing to give her a try, and Presley wasn't about to convince him to. She heard the message loud and clear. She supposed that this spacious room would do. It was furnished with 2 double beds, a couch, and 2 nightstands. The carpet was so plush that Presley was tempted to stretch out on it. Perhaps Carrie and Yolanda would sleep over for a weekend after they were settled in. This is all for me? Though all the sheets were a horrid black, her domain screamed of possibilities. It is, Jill tiredly replied. I'll need you to help with breakfast. Okay. What are we making? Oatmeal. It's the easiest thing to serve the children. Sounds good. I'll set my alarm, Presley assured Jill. Jill smiled, wished her a good night, and left the room. Presley took a long hot shower and changed into a pair of shorts and a tank top. Her room didn't have a TV, which meant that was one more thing she'd have to save for. She decided that venting to one of her friends was the medicine she needed. She tossed herself across the double bed that was closest to the window and dialed Carrie's number.
You're alive!
Her friend Carrie screeched in her ear.
Wait, is this Presley? Are you her abductor demanding a ransom? Are you?
Carrie, it's me. The mail order bride service is legit. You don't have to worry. You'll like it here. Presley rushed out.
What's wrong?
Carrie gently asked. Presley walked her friend through the unfortunate events that led to her current predicament. She then included the lifespan info, since Carrie deserved to know.
Seriously? You telling me that if I step foot on that island, I'll live for hundreds of years?
Yes, that's why I've got to stick around. I can't afford to be separated from Ainsley.
So you're serious about the whole lifespan thing?
I am, but let's forget about that for now. You'll believe it once you come here. What do I do about Sal?
It depends. Do you want him to fall in love with you? Do you want to stay clear of him and find another islander to marry? Do you want a marriage of convenience? At least with the third option, you'll be well fed and surrounded by happy children.
Presley sighed. I always dreamed of being swept away by a husband who loved me so much he'd move mountains for me.
So then it's option number 2. What's Sal like?
Handsome, passionate, guarded, and an incredible kisser.
All you have to do is be yourself, and everything will work out.
Of course, Carrie would say something like that. She was one of the people who hadn't abandoned her.
I do have some unfortunate news.
What is it?
Patrick and Shelley are, I heard a rumor he's proposing. How will Ainsley take it?
I don't know, but she has a chance of having a happy marriage. Her husband just has to be coached.
Presley, don't.
Carrie begged. It's for the greater good.
You can't interfere. Let your sister navigate her own marriage.
Carrie, I love you dearly. Thank you for hearing me out. Good night, Presley said before hanging up the phone. Chapter 7. Presley tiptoed into Sal's room. He was lying on his stomach, his body spread-eagled on the bed. His snoring was loud enough to make her ears ring. She walked over to the nightstand, staring at the framed photo of a smiling Sal and 6 happy children. His eyes were warm, his smile wide.
I wish he'd look at me like that.
She snatched his phone, which was unlocked. An amateur. Any one of the children could have gotten their hands on it. Presley tiptoed to Sal's ensuite bathroom and gently closed the door. She called a number and pressed the phone to her ear.
What do you want?
Kevin croaked out. Can you hear me? It's Presley. I stole Sal's phone. I'm hiding in the bathroom to talk to you.
You could have just asked Sal if you could use his phone.
Whatever, Captain Morals. I didn't call you so you'd lecture me,
Presley wanted to say.
I sort of pissed him off, but that's not why I'm calling you. My sister Ainsley is probably going to avoid you. She hates change and tries to avoid being attached to people. You need to get out of bed and make her breakfast. Then you should take her out somewhere.
Or I could just leave her alone.
Presley gasped. No, you don't want to do that. I want you and my sister to be happy. Don't you want that? She counted on the fact that Kevin was eager to have a loving marriage.
What does she like to eat for breakfast?
She loves smoothies. Dump Greek yogurt, frozen fruit, milk, 2 sugar packets in a blender, and you're golden.
Activities?
Presley wanted to snort at the thought of her sister doing anything exciting. She stiffened when the bathroom door opened, revealing an annoyed Sal. Ainsley's boring. Take her to the bookshop or something. Ugh, she loves those things. Gotta go, someone's coming. Presley ended the phone call and handed her cranky husband back his phone. I would have asked you for it, but you were sleeping. Sal's eyes traveled up and down her body, and his lips twitched.
Who were you talking to?
Kevin, I was giving him ideas on how to woo my sister.
Like what?
Sal reached out and captured a strand of her hair and began playing with it. His attention made Presley's stomach twist. She tried to calm down, to remember that he wasn't willing to give their marriage an honest chance. But his alluring scent clogged her nose, and his lips were so close. Ainsley's nervous about starting another relationship. Her last partner dumped her for someone else. I was only giving Kevin suggestions on how to woo her. You know, making her breakfast, planning a day filled with activities she's interested in, talking to her, that sort of thing.
What about you?
What about me? She shuddered when his thumb caressed her cheek. I don't...
Sal, Andy won't give me back my doll,
a child shrieked. He pulled away from her and rushed out of the bathroom. Presley followed, figuring that she needed to know what all the fuss was about. An adorable little girl with brown eyes and black hair that was done in 2 crooked pigtails stood in the doorway. She wore an oversized pink t-shirt and loose-fitting blue jeans. Presley kneeled down in front of the child and shot her a grin. Hi, Princess. My name is Presley. What's yours?
Molly, Andy took my doll.
It's Sunday. That means Andy gets the doll.
Molly pouted.
I wasn't done yet, Mr. Sal.
It broke Presley's heart that the kids had to share dolls. She and Ainsley each had a doll that they called their own. Since your doll's busy, why not go on an adventure with me? Presley asked, her eyes holding mischief. The child grinned.
Adventure?
"Oh, yes. Let's go make breakfast. It will be fun." Presley got to her feet and took Molly by the hand and left Sal's room. They walked past a male teenager who looked like he was waiting for someone. Presley nodded in greeting before taking an energetic girl to the elevator. 2 hours later, and Sal couldn't get Presley out of his head. Her scent, her smile, the way she handled Molly. All of it caused an ache to fill his chest. Nothing was going as he planned. Hell, sleep eluded him for half the night. All his brain kept on playing on repeat was the memory of their passionate kisses. "Hey, Sal, what are you thinking about?" his brother Kendrick asked. Sal, who was standing there like an idiot holding a bag of paper plates, shook his head. He dropped the plates on the picnic table beside the container of plastic ware. Then he glanced at his watch and frowned.
Where did the time go?
In a moment, a couple of teenagers who were assigned to barbecue duty would carry the meat outside. His desires were slowing him down.
Sorry, man. I'm running on fumes.
I get it. You didn't plan on marrying after what happened with Laura. How are you and Presley doing? Sal made his way over to the grill.
Fine.
Meaning you've already found a way to screw things up. I have a solution for you. Presley's words popped into his head. I'll stay married to you in name only for 6 months. Once I become a citizen, we'll divorce. Sal hated to admit that his brother was right.
It's complicated. Man, what the hell did you do? She wasn't happy with the arrangement I tried to make with her,
Sal grudgingly said.
What arrangement? To have a beneficial marriage.
Kendrick's eyes grew wide. You married a woman so that Jill could have extra help in the orphanage?
Not so loud.
You need to tell the woman that you want an actual relationship. Judging by how distracted you've been, you've got it bad for sure.
I don't.
I have an idea.
Take her to Tessa's spa opening tomorrow. Tessa gave me a discount on a couple of spa gift certificates. Then treat her to lunch. Get to know her. I don't.
Jill rushed out of the orphanage, lugging a pan of chicken. Kendrick rushed to take the pan from her.
Jill, just the person I want to see. Sal's taking Presley out tomorrow. I'll be more than happy to help for a bit. I'll also ask Thomas if he's free. Does that work for you?
Sal was about to tell his sister to forget the entire thing, but Presley walked into the backyard, excitement in her beautiful green eyes. She'd overheard them. Damn it, he couldn't squash her spirit. Of course, Jill replied. Sal walked over to his wife and took the platter of homemade burgers from her hands. So we're going on a date tomorrow?
Yes.
Anxiety beat at his gut, but he took care to keep his smile in place. I only have casual outfits, Presley warned. That fact surprised Sal. He assumed that Presley was the type who splurged on clothing.
Dress comfortably.
Presley watched Sal as he grilled the food. She smiled when he allowed a couple of the teenagers to take turns flipping meat. She couldn't help but be thrilled that Sal was willing to take her on a date. That would allow them to spend some time together. Perhaps he would see how compatible they were and would beg her to stay. But a distant warning bell intruded on her triumph. What if he's trying to make up for how abrupt he was last night? Presley shoved the idea away. She wouldn't squander the opportunity that was presented to her.
Miss Presley,
a teenage girl named Grace asked. Yes, honey.
Can I go to the store to grab a soda? She asked.
We have Coke in the fridge.
I'm a huge fan of orange Fanta. Jill never stocks it.
By yourself? The question was ridiculous. She looked old enough to drive. But Presley was nervous about giving anyone permission to leave. Grace grinned.
Greg's coming.
Okay, I don't see the harm in that. Don't take too long. The food's almost ready. Grace, a 5'0" with long brown hair, smiled before rushing off. Presley made a mental note to check on the teenager. As soon as the food was ready, Presley ushered the younger girls into line. After they filled their plates, she sat them down at the table. By the time everyone had plates, her eyes bounced around the backyard looking for Grace, but the teenager hadn't made it back from the store. "What's wrong?" Tessa asked, startling her. "Grace isn't here," Presley said, worry beginning to twist her stomach. "She's not feeling well? She asked me to go to the store and grab an orange Fanta. She said Greg would be going with her. But I see 17 kids here and—" Tessa groaned. "She played you, Presley. There isn't a Greg, and processing centers aren't open on Sunday. The owners decided that employees deserved a day to relax and spend with their families." Presley's stomach sank. "I've got to make things right. Sal and Jill won't blame this on you. If the kids believe I'm gullible, they'll walk all over me," Presley said, an idea sparking in her head. "I want in. Do tell," Tessa encouraged. Presley told Tessa of her scheme, and the other woman tweaked it a bit. After they were done planning, Sal approached with a plate of food.
"For you."
"Thanks," she said, taking the food. Tessa smirked. "Isn't that sweet? Where's my plate?" Sal gestured to Thomas, who was approaching the group, his hands bouncing 2 plates. Tessa dramatically kissed him on the cheek. Sal ushered Presley to the picnic table where Jill sat. She was counting under her breath. Presley sat beside the woman. "Grace has gone for a walk. She'll be back." Chapter 8. Presley awoke the next morning with excitement running through her veins. A teenager's lies to unravel, and a date could do that to a woman. She showered and dressed in a pair of faded jean shorts and a t-shirt. Most of the children were going to school, and she needed to help with preparing their lunches. She bolted out of the room and nearly collided with Tessa. "Your audience awaits," the redhead sang. "You're enjoying this a little too much," Presley said. "Someday I'll tell you stories about how I chased off my clueless father's gold-digging friends." "I'd love to hear it." The pair made their way to the kitchen, where Thomas, Jill, and Sal were already getting to work on lunches. Presley washed her hands and stood beside Sal, who was making the turkey and cheese sandwiches.
"Can you make the peanut butter and jelly?" he asked.
"Sure can." Thomas and Tessa cut fruit while Jill put everything into brown paper bags. Presley made 7 sandwiches for the kids who hated lunch meat. The entire time she reveled in being beside her handsome husband. When the task was complete, the group grabbed the bags and placed them on the side table in the dining room. The kids were being served a continental breakfast that consisted of milk, cereal, muffins, and bananas. Grace was sitting at a table in the back with the 3 eldest teenagers. Presley walked over, a smile on her face. "Grace, just the girl I wanted to see." Grace shot her an uneasy expression. "Hi. I heard you're a huge fan of Boston cream donuts, so I snagged one for you." Presley handed Grace a donut wrapped in a napkin. Grace smiled.
"Thanks, Presley. You're the best."
"Go on, honey, taste it," Presley encouraged in a sickly sweet tone. Grace, who had a half-eaten bowl of cereal, unwrapped the donut and took a big bite. Her face twisted in disgust. She quickly spat out the donut in a napkin.
"That's not Boston cream, that's jelly,"
the teenager cried. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I lie? Oops. You know that feeling you felt when I deceived you? That's exactly how I felt when you lied about getting a soda. In addition to suffering the hard taste of a donut you ate, you have kitchen duty every day after school until you tell one of us where you were. Before you think to lie, we'll follow up on whoever you were with to see if it's true. After all, your word can't be trusted. Grace, I hope you have a wonderful morning," Presley brightly said before walking away.
At noon, Sal and Presley made their way out of the orphanage. They walked side by side, their hands grazing on occasion. Presley was craving his touch, but didn't want to push things.
I figured we could visit Ainsley before dinner,
Sal said. That would be nice. Ainsley doesn't have a phone, so there's no way of talking to her.
Did she lose her phone?
Her ex took her phone back after they broke up. Oh, I hate that man. He was such a mooch who hardly bought my sister anything. When he bought the phone for her, I naively thought he was improving. But I was wrong.
What about you? Did you have a boyfriend?
Presley chuckled. No, people in our small, narrow-minded town thought I was trouble. Ainsley was the smart one, the classy one, the sister they pitied for being stuck with family like me.
Ainsley stood up for you?
Ainsley's she's family. I love her. But she was blind to what people thought. It didn't affect her getting work, so she had no reason to care.
So you were alone?
No, I have 2 best friends that are like sisters to me. Carrie and Yolanda have always had my back. They applied to be mail-order brides. They weren't sent rejection letters after providing their DNA samples, which is a good thing.
That's a good sign.
What about you? Do you have any exes I should know about? Sal grimaced.
I was married nearly 2 decades ago. I haven't bothered dating after my divorce.
Great. I have to win the heart of a man who has been burned before. Presley decided to change the topic. She'd return to the topic of the ex-wife. How many siblings do you have? Sal sighed.
Kendrick and Jill are the ones I still call siblings. I don't speak to the others.
Sal explained that 3 of his siblings and his Aunt Rosa tried to sell the building that a benefactor provided for the orphans to a mysterious buyer. Leslie had hated their parents for supposedly keeping her from a life of luxury, so she had blackmailed her birth mother's husband to buying the property. Thanks to Thomas Daly's quick thinking, the sale had been deemed illegal.
I haven't spoke to those traders since.
Judging by what I overheard the other day, your aunt wants to change that.
She does, but it won't happen.
Is your ex-wife still living on the island? Presley blurted out. Her curiosity got the better of her. She needed to know if she'd have an awkward run-in with Laura.
She left the island shortly after giving birth to her daughter, Melina. The man she had the affair with wouldn't claim the baby, so Melina grew up in the orphanage. She's at a university in New York to study engineering.
Wait, you raised your ex-wife's child? Presley asked in disbelief.
Melina needed a home. She was abandoned by the 2 people who were supposed to care for her.
At that moment, Presley lost her heart to Salvador Carter. He was a good man who put everyone's needs above his own. Hell, he even got married again so that Jill could have someone to lend her a hand with the children. Did the man ever do something for himself? Presley was hesitant to step into the spa where her sister worked. It was definitely a place where well-to-do people went to get pampered. The reception area had decorative palm trees and a cushy seating area with a wine cabinet and a water cooler. Presley wondered if she would be allowed to sample some of the fancy wine. She was grateful no customers were in the waiting room. She wasn't exactly dressed to impress, like her sister was. Ainsley was sitting behind the reception desk, sporting a faraway look. Her husband frowned as they approached. Sal's disapproving gaze on what he probably thought was Ainsley's unprofessionalism spurred Presley into action. "You look sad, twin. Who do you want me to punch?" she asked, knocking Ainsley out of her thoughts. Her twin quickly glanced over at the seating area and sagged in relief. "No one." Sal smiled at her.
Hi, Ainsley. I'm Sal.
It's nice to meet you. I thought I would surprise Presley with an appointment.
That's fantastic. I've never gone to a spa before. What am I getting?
Presley had assumed that they would check on Ainsley, then head out to the restaurant. She had no clue she was finally going to experience a spa trip.
Facial,
Ainsley replied after looking down at her tablet.
Carla should be here to get you in 15 minutes.
Ain, you're upset about something. Tell me what it is, or I'll ask Kevin. We're BFFs now, Presley said. She was exaggerating, but her sister didn't have to know that.
I had a run-in with Stacy Stevens.
Of course, Ainsley found herself at odds with yet another shrew. Sal scowled. That woman is nothing but trouble.
Why?
Pre demanded. Ask Kevin about it, Ainsley. It's not my place to tell you about her.
Why do people always have to say stuff like that?
Presley complained.
Because it's part of setting appropriate boundaries, Pre. It isn't good to gossip,
Ainsley lectured.
But everyone does it. It's just that I'm honest about it.
Her husband shot her a patient look.
Pre, whatever you do, don't go snooping,
Ainsley warned.
I never make promises, Ain. You know that.
Presley would see what she could do to dig up about this mystery woman. Her attention was then caught by Carla the aesthetician, who confidently strode into the waiting room. She ushered Presley into the room where facials were held. Sal was disappointed that Ainsley didn't question him about her sister. He sat there in the waiting room for an hour, and the receptionist never moved from her spot. If their situations had been reversed, Presley would have spent the time getting to know her sister's husband. He wanted to storm over to Ainsley and tell her that she needed to be more invested in Presley's life, but that would have pissed his wife off. She was protective of her twin and would have seen that as a personal attack on her character. So, Sal waited for Presley to enter the reception area.
It was fantastic,
Presley gushed.
Thanks so much, Sal.
She tossed her arms around him, her proximity making his heart pound. He held her close, his fingers tangling in her hair. Presley's face tilted up to his, and he couldn't help but to claim her lips. Let's go to dinner, Sal said. Presley shook her head.
Let's head back. Tessa and Thomas must want to go home by now.
Are you sure? Sal knew Presley was right, but he wanted to keep her to himself.
Maybe we can do it another time,
she suggested. Sal gave Presley a squeeze before grabbing her hand. After waving goodbye to Ainsley, they went home. Chapter 9. On Wednesday afternoon, the 12 school-aged children were sitting at the picnic tables. Due to some disappointing grades, Presley insisted on having homework club. It would be a time for the orphans to do their homework and ask one another for help. She was staring down Grace, who seemed to be doodling rather than accomplishing anything, when Rick, a preteen, approached her. Rick's blue eyes held frustration.
Oh crap, he's gonna ask me for help,
Presley mentally told herself. Despite the fear that she'd be ridiculed for her lack of school smarts, Presley kept it cool. After all, Jill sent her outside with a laptop.
Miss Presley, I'm having trouble with my math homework,
he admitted.
Let me see,
Presley said. Oh, crap. They were working on word problems, her least favorite part of math. She concentrated on it for a bit before doing what she did best. She did some online research. Luckily, there was a math whiz that filmed videos about how to solve certain problems. Presley smiled at Rick and told him that she would watch a few videos to figure things out. 20 minutes later, Rick and Presley finished working on the homework and she was on to helping someone else with chemistry. It was an hour later when Grace stood and stormed away. She abandoned her notebook and sketch pad. Presley shamelessly flipped through it and saw nothing but drawings of hearts, rings, and "I love Jack" scrawled on pages. Great. Grace had a boyfriend. Before she could fully process the situation, her face and body were covered with rancid chili.
"There, I tossed out the trash,"
Grace huffed. Presley got to her feet, stormed over to a smug-looking Grace, and gave her a bear hug. Grace tried to squirm away, but Presley was stronger than the little gremlins. After ensuring that the brat was covered in meat, Presley pulled away.
"That was stupid. Since you'll be grounded so long, you won't be able to go on dates with Jack. Was that who you snuck off to see?"
Presley asked, ignoring the smell of the rotting meat.
"I hate you. You ruined everything. The only thing that ruined everything was you. Because of your obnoxious attitude. Homework club will have to come to an end. All your siblings will be forced to do their homework in their rooms, and I couldn't help but notice you didn't get anything done."
"Can Mr. Sal return you?"
Grace demanded, a snarl twisting her face. Grace's question hurt, but she didn't show it.
"No, he can't. I'm not a grocery item, sweetheart. I'm his wife. Now, because of that insensitive comment, you'll have to do a report on a strong woman. And if you don't, there will be consequences."
Grace flipped Presley the bird and stormed away.
"Pack it up, kids. Grace ruined all the fun," Presley said.
Sal finished unclogging a toilet that one of the kids tossed a doll into. He stretched his back and took a deep breath. Tyler, a mischievous 7-year-old, needed to be disciplined. He washed his hands and rubbed his forehead, a headache beginning to assault him. It was the lack of sleep affecting his body. Presley would be leaving in 6 months. That would be a problem, since the kids had already taken a liking to her. Nope, that realization wouldn't be completed. Sal wasn't interested in a true marriage, though Presley's lips and body were enticing. Sighing, Sal left the bathroom and nearly crashed into a horrified Kendrick. He had 6 roses in his hand. "Grabbed some flowers for Julia for her birthday and thought that you should give some to Presley." Sal scowled. "I can buy flowers for my wife." "No big deal. You can pay me for them." Kendrick thrust the roses at Sal and he reflexively caught them. Kendrick stepped aside in time to see Presley rushing toward them, her blonde hair damp from a shower. She wore a t-shirt, jeans, and a pair of flip-flops. Her eyes lit up when she saw the roses.
"Beautiful flowers. Are those for me?"
"They are," Sal grudgingly said. He promised himself that he'd pay Kendrick back for them. Presley reached out and took the roses and buried her nose in the petals.
"After the day I had, this is a treat."
"What happened?" Sal asked.
"Grace happened. She dumped old chili on me. She smuggled it in the orphanage. Cleaning dung out of my hair was a nightmare. Ugh, I can still smell it."
Fury nearly tore Sal's gut open. "Get some rest. I'll deal with Grace."
"Oh, no, dear knight. I'll deal with Grace the best way I know how."
"And how would that be?"
"Embarrassing her. Believe me when I say she'll rue the day she met me."
"Pretty sure she already feels that way if she dumped food on you," Kendrick pointed out. "Want to go out?" Sal blurted out. He would hear the events that led to the minor tussle. It felt wrong being shut out of her life.
"Sure. Let me put something on. I'll meet you in the lobby."
A half an hour later, Presley strolled out of the elevator wearing one of her creations, a casual, off-the-shoulder green dress with a flowering skirt. She paired the outfit with gold sandals. Presley's hair was up in a ponytail. Sal was leaning against the wall wearing a blue t-shirt and jean shorts. His dark eyes flared with desire, and his gaze took her in. "You're so beautiful." Sal's husky comment caused butterflies to fill Presley's stomach. At that moment, hope bloomed in her chest. It was possible that she was winning him over.
"Stop thinking that, Pre. He's only being nice because Grace dumped rotten food all over you."
Her attempts at reasoning with herself failed when Sal held out his hand. Presley accepted his hand, and they walked out into a humid evening. Sal watched his wife as he took a bite of the pizza that Portum Pub served. Her green eyes lit with excitement. He knew she'd enjoy a deep dish. Sal was working on his usual turkey club. There were people trying their hand at pool as pop music blasted from the speakers. Sal was more of a reggaeton kind of guy, but he'd tolerate the synthesized music that Presley had swayed to before the waitress brought out their food. After their second bite of food, his date's eyes lit up.
"We should have cooking classes to give the volunteer cooks a break. I'm thinking I can teach the children how to make simple things like pizza or a casserole. Maybe I can work with a small group 3 days a week. We should take whoever gets high marks to dinner as well. It will give them an incentive to do well." As she spoke, the passion for the orphans shone in her expressive eyes. Sal's chest tightened at the sight.
"You like it at the orphanage?"
"I do. The kids are wonderful. The staff isn't half bad either."
Presley's wink caused his heart rate to pick up.
"What are your hobbies?"
That question was asked to keep the conversation going. He didn't want to dwell on the impossible, like Presley being interested in him.
"I like playing pool, designing dresses. I'm obsessed with social media. I think it's because I'm nosy. I guess it's fun, learning how others live. Sometimes I imagine the dresses I'd design for some of the influencers, and I sketch them. What about you?"
Sal shrugged.
"Grilling, playing pool, reading autobiographies, jogging when I have the time. Nothing special."
"After having to hoof it when a deer took out my car back home, I never want to walk unless I have to."
"Then you must hate Portum Island."
"Nope, everything's close by. That horrid town I grew up in is a different story. One time I had to walk 10 miles to go to the grocery store. It was horribly cold, and I thought my bones would be frostbitten, but I made it."
"Why hasn't Ainsley visited the orphanage?"
Presley shrugged.
"She's going through something difficult, Sal.
Your first groom deserted you. Then you married a complete stranger who—"
Sal was about to say who didn't want a real marriage, but he thought better of it. Presley nodded in understanding.
"Ainsley doesn't know about our arrangement. Sometimes it's hard to remember that it isn't permanent."
"You don't have to leave, Presley."
"Do you think you could love me someday, Sal?"
A reminder of how miserable he had been when his ex-wife left him for a better life trapped the yes from coming out. Sal's silence caused Presley to look down at the half-eaten pizza before making eye contact with him.
"Sal, there's no point in asking me to stay if you can't give me what I want. How about that game of pool?"
Chapter 10. A bleary-eyed Sal stumbled out of his room on Friday morning. It had been nearly 2 days since his talk with Presley, and his entire world had come apart. If he had to endure another one of Presley's sad smiles, he'd gouge his eyes out. Sal couldn't understand why Presley insisted on leaving in less than 6 months. The kids adored her, and so did the staff. Hell, even he was becoming fond of her. Before Sal could ponder Presley any more, Grace rushed down the hall. Her eyes were wide with horror.
"Sal, you have to do something," she shrieked.
"Keep it down, Grace."
"Keep my voice down? That wife of yours is ruining my life. Did you hear what she got Principal Williams to agree to?"
"Why don't you tell me, Grace?"
Sal raked his hands through his tousled hair.
She's going to all my classes to make sure I behave. She can't. Jack—"
"Your not so secret boyfriend will think you're a dork, right?"
Grace scowled.
"She snitched on me. I liked it better when you and Jill were clueless."
"Well, those days are over." If your boyfriend makes fun of you for having Presley follow you all day, then he isn't the right guy for you.
I'm not taking love advice from a guy who isn't sharing a room with his wife.
Fine, Grace. You know it all. The rest of us are just stupid adults. Just to let you know, Jack will break your heart. I know by how he can't even be caught dead coming into the orphanage.
That's not true. I'm the one who hasn't invited him.
Then invite him. Prove to me that Jack will love you no matter what.
Sal was goading her, but it needed to be done. The quicker Grace ended her infatuation with Jack, the better off the young lady would be. There was no sense in her flunking class and limiting her options.
Jack loves me.
Sure he does.
Grace scowled and untucked a locket from her shirt.
He gave me this.
Grace, I don't want you to get hurt.
He won't hurt me.
After uttering that assurance, Grace stormed over to the elevator. Portum High School was 3 blocks away from the orphanage. By 8 o'clock, the weather was a brutal 90 degrees. Sweat gathered on the nape of Presley's neck. She wore a pair of jean shorts and a pink shirt with ribbons. Grace opted for the short blue dress with a high neckline. It was probably the nicest thing she owned. Presley's heart ached for the teenager until she started talking.
You're so embarrassing. They're already staring.
They walked up to the stone steps and past a gaggle of girls that were congregating by the entrance. They were all wearing colorful summer clothes, their face and nails painted to perfection. The fake laughter and judgmental stares dubbed them as the popular rich kids. Grace, who was normally mouthy, withered in their presence.
They don't have power to smite you,
Presley said under her breath.
Grace, is this one of the new orphans?
A tall, thin teenager with short, styled brown locks and tan skin asked. She said the word orphan like it was disgusting.
No, Right. You had to bring your mommy to school,
the popular girl replied.
No, wait. You don't have one. My bad.
Her jab wasn't at all funny, but her friends laughed like hyenas. Grace fled into the school and Presley followed behind her. You know they're being rude because you don't fight back, right? Presley practically shouted the words as she raced to keep up with Grace. Grace ignored her and rushed into the homeroom, which was nearly full. Presley sighed and took the seat beside her. Presley sat next to Grace in art class. It was the last period of the day. Thus far, Grace had acted like the perfect student, since Presley would be joining her on Monday if her behavior didn't improve. She grabbed her folder from the many storage lockers. When she slammed it down, Presley slid it in front of her and opened it. She kept a neutral expression on her face as she flipped through the folder, which had a stick figure with its foot in the sand, a sketch of an apple, and a piece of paper with the name Jack written all over it. Art is the best class of the day. You barely tried.
I don't have to talk to you,
Grace huffed. 2 students walked into the classroom, a tall guy with jet black hair and blue eyes, and a short redhead. Grace's eyes widened when the students walked over to them. The redhead smirked when she eyed Presley.
It's so nice that they let Hicks into the school now.
The kid's smirk was followed by a chuckle from the guy.
Jack?
Grace asked, stunned.
I'll let you catch up with the charity case,
the redhead said before rushing to another table.
Jack, it's great to see you,
Grace purred, her eyes filled with love. Jack shifted from foot to foot. Sorry about Kelsey. You know how she is.
How have you been?
Okay, I'm thinking of applying to leave the island for the summer.
Really?
Yeah. Mom signed me up for a summer camp. They need to test my resistance to the barrier first. It's a rec camp in California. What are you doing this summer?
I don't have any plans yet. I'll miss you when you go.
Babe, Please don't ask me to miss out on an opportunity.
I'm not.
I've got to go. I'll call you later. Jack rushed over to Kelsey and sat beside her.
That's the guy you're throwing your life away for?
Presley whispered to Grace. Grace glared.
He's only weird because you're here. You're in his seat. Since Gabby's absent, he's sitting with Kelsey.
If he's loyal, it shouldn't matter.
I can't blame Jack. I wouldn't have spoken to him if his mother showed up to all his classes.
The words, "I'm not your mother," were on the tip of Presley's tongue, but she reconsidered. Despite her better judgment, the orphans were growing on her. It would be difficult to leave in less than 6 months. The loyalty of teenagers is so fragile.
Oh, please. Like you wouldn't have done the same in high school.
I had 2 best friends in high school. We're still friends today. We would do anything for each other. One day, I hope you find what I have. Grace rolled her eyes, but Presley could see the wistfulness that entered her blue eyes. Deciding that she was making headway, Presley decided to encourage Grace to do her art assignment. By the end of the day, Presley was relieved that high school was nothing more than a horrid memory. The 2 women walked back to the orphanage, Grace glaring the entire way. Presley ignored the teens sulking, anticipation causing a pleasant distraction. She would see Sal again. She smiled when they entered the lobby. Her husband was standing by the desk with his arms crossed. His brown eyes traveled up and down Presley's form, causing her skin to tingle.
It was horrible. I can't believe you guys did this to me.
After Grace's shouted words, the teenager rushed through the door that led to the stairs. Maybe the exercise will cool her down, Presley said. Sal stepped forward and tucked a lock of her hair behind her ear. Then he touched a spot on her cheek. You have a drop of paint on your face. His closeness caused her stomach to twist into knots.
I think I had a little too much fun in art class.
You were missed.
By whom?
Presley's heart nearly stopped when Sal's eyes darkened. His lips parted, and he drew closer to her. His mouth was suddenly on hers, the kiss filled with tenderness.
Miss Presley, Molly stole my doll,
a child screamed. Sal pulled away from Presley, his cheeks flushed. Sorry. After uttering that heartbreaking apology, he rushed into the kitchen. Presley turned to see Andy standing there with tears running down her face. Presley squatted to her level and brushed her tears away. It's okay, pretty Andy. I'm back now. We can go on another adventure. Presley needed to find a way for the orphans to be given their own things. The adorable child's eyes lit up.
Just the 2 of us?
Of course. Let's see what Miss Jill needs done. Presley took the child's hand and they wandered over to the reception desk. An exhausting-looking Jill was flipping through an overflowing binder. Hey, Jill, what needs to be done? Balancing the accounts, planning a fundraiser, the laundry, and planning dinner, she listed. Andy and I will figure out dinner, Presley offered. That would be a great help. It was too bad they would have to enter the kitchen, where her reluctant husband had escaped to. Chapter 11. Presley smiled at Tessa as she walked into Portum Island coffee shop. It was 10 o'clock, and the place was packed. She smiled at the redhead, who was already working on an ice water. Tessa gestured to a brownie and iced tea sitting at a place setting. Presley sat in front of her friend and smiled. Is this for me? Sure is. I called the orphanage and Sal told me you liked brownies and iced tea. Was he wrong? Presley grinned. He was right. She took a sip of the tea and her taste buds applauded. It was peach-flavored tea, her favorite. How are things going? I'm not sure. Tessa arched an eyebrow. How in the hell do you not know how your own marriage is going? Sometimes Sal's sweet. He surprised me with a facial, bought me flowers, and took me to dinner. He has even kissed me a few times. But
But he hasn't asked me to stay with him. He'll say stuff like, "You know you don't have to leave," but I think he's saying that for the sake of the kids. Sal gave you flowers? What kind? 6 red roses. They were thoughtful.
Tessa bit her lip. Then she pulled her iPhone out of her purse and began texting. She glared down at her screen for a moment and then eyed Presley with conflict in her eyes.
What are you hiding? I'm curious about something, but it's not important. If you want to get closer to Sal, take matters into your own hands. Like what?
Tessa shrugged.
He's your husband. You'll know what he'll appreciate.
A walk on the beach, Presley said, recalling their conversation while at dinner.
Sal loves the quiet, but he'll never get away. He takes his duties seriously. I can't blame him. The kids are wonderful. I want to start a toy drive for the children.
Tessa's eyes lit up.
Really? A couple of the younger kids have to share dolls. There aren't enough games for the boys to play, and the teenagers are wearing clothes that don't fit. They deserve so much more.
Tessa nodded.
Aunt Speranza's having a baby shower at the orphanage. She asked for people to buy things for the children instead of her child. Her husband's loaded. I have a feeling most people aren't going to donate anything useful.
What do you mean? Tessa sighed.
Julia told me the rich ladies donate unwanted ball gowns, formal wear they no longer need. One of the society's finest teaches the kids etiquette twice a year. The kids hate the lessons, but love the food that Diana Adams has her chef prepare for the event.
How are etiquette lessons useful?
You have to remember, in Diana's world, that is something the children would need to know.
My nephew's wife is wasting money on a store-bought snack. I never thought I'd see the day when Sal would accept such a thing. Presley looked up to see an unfamiliar, rail-thin woman with a stick-straight brown hair and cold brown eyes.
Do I know you?
I'm Sal's Aunt Rosa. What are you doing here?
Presley scowled. What are you doing here?
Her question caught Rosa off guard. The other woman's eyes drifted to the counter and then landed on her again. Ordering a cup of iced coffee. Why else would I be here?
Since you're so concerned about the well-being of the orphans, why not volunteer?
Rosa stuck up her nose. I have better things to do than spend my time with unruly children.
Like make Jill's life miserable?
Presley replied in a sickly sweet tone. How dare you speak of someone you don't understand?
I understand that you tried to steal the home from the children to line your own pockets. You didn't care about the children or how your niece and nephews would feel. You created a divide between siblings when you should have deterred Leslie from what she was doing. Women like you are nothing more than poison.
You won't last a year with Sal. I can see it, she said before storming over to the counter. Tessa whistled.
You went in on that lady. She hurt people I care about. So you do care about Sal.
Of course I do. And I think he's into me too. Something's holding him back.
So you would fight for him.
I will, I promise. Presley stood in front of Sal's door, her heart racing. It was nearly 11, and the kids were snug in their beds. She lifted her head and knocked. Moments later, the door swung open and Sal's eyes fell on hers. She cleared her throat and spoke.
Can I come in?
Sal nodded, and she stepped into his room. Like hers, there were gifts from the children. She smiled at the drawings that covered the walls. The orphanage was truly Sal's entire life. Is there something wrong, Presley? She turned to see concern in Sal's dark eyes.
Right. I don't usually go to his room." He was so close, and her lips tingled from the memory of their tender kiss 2 short days ago. "Yes," Presley rasped out. "Your lips aren't on mine." Her admission flipped a switch in Sal. He pulled her close, and his lips devoured hers. His hands tangled in her hair, and their mouths met. Sal's kiss deepened, his hands wandering under her shirt. Presley's breath caught when she felt his hands tracing up and down her sides. A haze of passion must have gripped them both, because their kisses turned frantic. The desperation in the way he kissed Presley should have been a warning, but Presley ignored the warning bells. For once Sal was giving in to the attraction that bounced between them. One moment she was upright, and the next she was in Sal's bed. She could have stopped what happened, but damn it, Sal was her husband, and Tessa did say to fight for him. When there were no longer any barriers between them, they became entangled in one another. Sal stared down at Presley's sleeping face. His heart clenched at the sight of her. It was early morning, and he didn't want to wake her up. He sat on the bed, his back resting against the headboard. Last night had been a loss of control. The moment Presley had glanced into his eyes with so much hunger, he unraveled. And now, unease was becoming his constant shadow. What if Presley wasn't willing to stay? What if he couldn't make her happy? She loved the children and was invested in them. His ex-wife hadn't accepted the orphans' drawings and created adventures for them. Homework club had been a nice addition. Was she simply doing a good deed? Would she be content to live in the orphanage for the next 50 years? Orphans. Oh, crap. Presley needed to leave before one of the children saw her in his bed, but he didn't have the heart to wake her up. Besides, he should do something nice for her. Smiling, Sal dug into Presley's jean shorts for her phone. It was unlocked. His kisses had probably distracted her from making what she called an amateur mistake. Slipping out of his warm bed, he tiptoed into the bathroom. He glared at the contacts, trying to decide who he wanted to speak to. He decided on Yolanda. Since Presley told him, she was practical.
"Girl, you better be having some emergency. It's 5 a.m.
Yolanda's voice caused his heart to beat faster. He wasn't good with people. "Sorry, it's Sal. I need guidance on something."
"So you took her phone to talk to me?" "Yep, you and Pre are made for each other."
"Did she ever tell you about her dream date?"
"Presley cares too much about her people to dream for herself. If you don't realize that by now, there's no hope for you."
It was a yes or a no question, damn it. "Besides a love for flowers, pool, and spas, I have nothing," Sal said.
"The only advice I have for you is to treat Pre the way that she treats you."
"I should have called Carrie," Sal muttered. Yolanda snorted.
"Carrie would have told you to take her camping to a couple's retreat. She's all about spending time with those you love. I think things differently. No matter what you come up with, it will be special for Presley. It will mean something to her that you cared enough to think up something for her."
Guilt hit him in the gut at the realization that Kendrick had been orchestrating gifts for Presley. Yes, Sal had paid his brother back, but that wouldn't matter to someone like his wife. He would have to tell his brother to stop meddling. He wanted Presley to stay. He just had to figure out how he'd convince her to do so. "Thanks, Yolanda. You gave me insight."
"Glad I could help. Whatever you do, don't screw this up for yourself. Presley's a wonderful person."
After Yolanda's parting words, he hung up the phone. Chapter 12. The smell of maple syrup pulled Presley into wakefulness. She slowly opened her eyes, blinking at the sun. She rolled over, only to realize she had spent the night in Sal's bedroom. Pre blushed at the memory of their lovemaking the night before. That had been an incredible experience filled with tenderness and passion. Her reputation oftentimes repelled men from asking her on dates. That had been her first experience, and it was one that she'd cherish for years to come. The thought that Sal took what he wanted and wasn't looking for a commitment lingered in her thoughts. But they slipped away when her husband exited the bathroom and smiled at her.
I made you pancakes with maple syrup.
His words shot panic into her. What about the kids?
I cooked enough for the ones who were interested. The rest of them gorged themselves on donuts.
That was sweet of you, Sal.
He grinned. Come on.
Bree slipped out of bed and made her way over to the desk, where a couple of pancakes were piled on a plate with a cup of coffee resting beside it. The coffee was light-colored, which told her that Sal recalled how she liked things. She turned to face her husband and grinned. Thanks so much, Sal. This means a lot to me. She sat on the chair and was about to cut into the pancakes before something occurred to her. What about you? Aren't you eating?
I grabbed a donut earlier. I didn't want to wake you.
Presley took a sip of her coffee and grinned. He actually knew how she liked her coffee. Despite their closeness, Presley wasn't positive her twin knew her order. Speaking of twin, why hadn't Ainsley managed to visit her? Presley heard rumors that Kevin was treating her well. She had taken to texting her brother-in-law to ensure that he was wooing her properly. Perhaps her new job at the spa kept her busy.
Do you like them?
Sal's question startled Bree. She was sitting there holding the fork in her hand. She sliced through the pancake and took a bite. Delicious! My favorite! Sal placed a warm hand on her shoulder.
Glad you like it, Bree.
Before Presley could bring up the elephant in the room, Andy burst into Sal's room with tears streaming down her face. Presley rushed over to her. She got to the precious child's level and kissed her cheek. What's wrong, pretty girl? Bree was waiting for the kid to explain that Molly stole her doll again. She was waiting to hear that Michael hogged the TV again, but her next words sent pain slicing through her heart.
Miss Jill told me that I'm going to be adopted.
Presley's arms reflectively tightened around the little girl she had grown close to. The last thing she wanted to do was imagine her life without the little girl who thought that folding clothes was an adventure. But joy filled her heart at the same time. Andy would have a happy childhood with two parents who loved and cared for her and her sister. She knew from past conversations with Jill she would never separate Andy and Molly. And who's adopting you and your sister?
I don't care. I want to stay with you, Miss Presley. I love you.
Her declaration warmed Presley's heart. And I love you too, pretty girl. It doesn't mean we can't stay friends. This will be another adventure you can tell me about. As she spoke, Presley forced enthusiasm into her voice. This was challenging, but she trusted Jill to place the kids in a wonderful home.
I want to stay here,
Andy roared. Presley held the little one close, allowing her tears to soak her shirt, and Sal joined the group hug, holding both of them tight. After what felt like forever, Sal pulled away.
Why don't we go back downstairs to talk to Jill?
He gently suggested. Andy pouted.
But I want to stay.
I know, pretty girl, but it's like I told you, your next adventure is coming. Presley and Andy walked into the lobby, where Jill was softly speaking to Molly. Molly was clutching her doll as tears poured down her face. Molly looked at her with sad eyes.
Miss Presley, tell Miss Jill we don't have to leave,
she begged. Oh, honey, you're going off to a new adventure. Aren't you excited? Presley shot Molly a wide grin.
Why can't you come?
Molly hotly asked. Because it's my job to help other little girls like you. The front door opened and a well-dressed couple entered the lobby. The woman was stunning with dark brown hair and brown eyes, while her husband looked like a surfer who was stuffed in a suit. Jill smiled at the couple. Mr. and Ms. Adams, it's so nice to see you both again, Jill said. Molly's and Andy's eyes lit up. Molly struck first, rushing over to Diana with open arms.
Miss Diana, I had a bad day. Did you bring food? Will you teach us how to be princesses?
Will you, Miss Molly, what did I teach you? Diana Adams asked. Molly stopped her questions and held out her hand.
Pleased to meet you again, Miss Diana.
The woman smiled down at the child with loving eyes. It's nice to meet you as well, little princess. Did Miss Jill tell you that we're going to get to know one another today? Andy, feeling left out, approached Diana and also held out her hand.
No,
Molly said. We're taking you to our house so you can color and play. Would you like that? At the promise of playing, the adorable children cheered. Presley hugged them, introduced herself to who were most likely the twins' new parents, and watched as they left the orphanage. That was harder than I thought it would be. Jill wiped away a tear. We're lucky that Diana Adams wants to adopt. She has 7 grown sons of her own. And they know them. That's a great idea. Presley was relieved the twins weren't hanging out with strangers. It's part of the new adoption guidelines Liz Lawson helped put in place. The children should get to know the couples organically so that the couples can see if the children are a good match. The volunteers you see are really prospective parents. They also have to take parenting class. Presley pulled Jill into her arms. You're truly a brilliant woman. I admire you, sister of mine. What needs done? Laundry. On it, Presley said before rushing into the laundry room. Sal smiled down at Jill, who was at the reception desk. It was after dark, and the kids were watching a movie in the rec room with Kendrick. Julia and a volunteer named Lucy were sitting with the babies. Presley was cleaning up the kitchen. Big brother, you want something? You all set for the night? Sal hated the idea of leaving Jill with the children, but he desired to spend some time with Presley. Go woo your wife. Everything's fine. Have you thought about getting a husband? Jill giggled. You think a man would want to help run an orphanage? You think he'd be happy raising a family here? I'm happy here. That's because you grew up here, Sal. Presley and Julia love it here. That's because they were mail-order brides who were running away from something. Last I checked, there isn't a service for women looking for husbands. Most of the islanders who court me want to stop working here when we marry. I can't do that. Sal sighed. You deserve to be happy, sis. I know, Sal. So do you. Now go on. Ask your wife to go on a walk. She had a difficult day today. Presley's heart was shattering, and there was nothing to do for it. Molly and Andy had a wonderful time with Diana Adams, which was a good thing. But she couldn't imagine life without waking up to their exuberance. As she wiped down the countertop, her heart felt like it would crack. Presley, you okay? Sal's sudden appearance caused her to jolt. Presley dropped the cloth and turned to face her husband. A mixture of confusion and hope battered against her bruised heart. I don't know. Sal's concern caused tears to wet her cheeks. Oh gosh, I can't. Sal pulled Presley into his arms, her face buried in his chest. His hands trailed up and down her back, his comfort causing more tears to spring from her eyes. I'm so selfish. I should be happy that Andy and Molly are being adopted. Goodness, Presley, it isn't like they're leaving tomorrow. No matter how much Presley tried convincing herself it was only natural for those girls to be adopted, the sadness still consumed her. It's okay, baby. Let it out. For a moment, they held each other, Sal's arms her only lifeline. When the tears dried up, Presley pulled away and looked into his eyes. How do you do it? Do what? How do you let them go? Sal squeezed her tightly, his hands stroking her hair. It isn't easy, baby, but the pain will fade.
Chapter 13. Presley's eyes flew open, and she let out a groan. Her head ached from all the crying she did the night before. Sal's side of the bed was empty, which meant that she overslept. Presley slipped into her clothes and rushed back to her room. They would need to discuss her moving into his room soon. She took a quick shower and tossed on a sundress and paired it with sandals. She didn't feel any better about the situation. Sighing, Presley rushed into the hallway and nearly collided with a breathless Grace.
"Come quick! Andy and Molly are fighting again."
The teenager grabbed Presley's arm and practically dragged her to the elevator.
"Where are Jill and Sal?"
"They're getting ready for Esperanza's baby shower." In all the craziness of the other day, Presley had forgotten about the event. She hoped that the kids would be given enough toys to play with.
"Right."
When the doors opened to the second floor, Presley blinked in surprise. But Grace rushed down the hall.
"Something isn't right about this,"
Presley thought, but she followed the troublemaker anyway. Sal wanted to strangle his brother. Kendrick led him into the nursery, which was currently empty. That was no surprise. Ever since Liz made her way onto the island, adopting children went into style. The babies were hanging out with prospective parents underneath strict supervision at the community center. All Sal wanted to do was find Presley to see if she was all right. His wife was gutted by the potential adoption of Molly and Andy. His wife loved with all her heart.
What now?
Kendrick grinned.
I bought Julia a charmed bracelet. I will add charms whenever something significant happens to us. What does that have to do with me? I ordered a bracelet for you to give Presley, since you suck at wooing your women. I didn't ask for your help. If you want Presley to stay, you better try harder.
Fury fueled Sal's next words.
Who said I wanted her to stay? Who told you that I needed help wooing her? What makes you think I desire a real marriage?
He was planning on asking Presley to stay. He just wanted Kendrick to stop interfering. Kendrick held up his hands.
I like her for you, Sal.
Sal grinned.
She's perfect for me. I'll tell her that in my own way. Stop interfering. I spoke to one of her friends. Presley wants to feel like she matters.
Kendrick grinned.
I'm glad you saw the error of your ways. I'll cancel the order for the charm bracelet. Are you going to have a wedding? We're already married.
Kendrick groaned.
You aren't romantic in the slightest. Who said I wanted her to stay? Who told you that I needed help wooing her? What makes you think I desire a real marriage?
"You didn't bring me down here to break up a fight."
"I just wanted you to know the truth, Miss Presley.
You knew Kendrick was going to talk to Sal about the bracelet. You wanted to hurt me for judging your relationship with your boyfriend. Fine, you succeed."
Presley stormed away from the cruel teenager, hurt and exhaustion mingling in her soul. She supposed she had Kendrick to thank for the thoughtful gifts and romantic dates. It sucked, knowing that your husband romanced you to please his brother. Presley needed to be alone, but had so much to accomplish. It was the day before Esperanza's baby shower. Now wasn't the time to pull a disappearing act, though she wanted to. Her heart was broken. No amount of keeping busy could dull the pain.
"I should be used to this feeling by now. I wasn't even good enough for my own parents. They stuck around out of obligation, and so did Ainsley. She's living a happy life and hasn't checked on me once."
The thoughts caused tears to sting Presley's eyes.
Miss Presley, why are you crying?
Molly's question was followed by arms wrapping around her waist. She reached out and caressed the top of the head of the little girl who filled her with so much joy.
I just have something stuck in my eyes.
Can we go on another adventure?
Of course we can. Presley iced the last of the cupcakes that were going to be served at the baby shower. Andy and Molly sat on stools at the island, decorating their own cupcakes. There was icing around their mouths and a bit on Andy's pink shirt. The girls were overly excited to take on the tasks of being her shadows.
Miss Presley, can I decorate another cupcake?
Andy's pleading question caused Presley's lips to twitch. You've had enough decorating for the day, Andy. Why don't you guys take naps before dinner? Neither twin looked pleased at the notion, but Andy smothered a yawn. It had been an eventful day packed with chores, baking, and cleaning. Molly pouted.
I don't want to sleep.
Of course you do. After you're well rested, we can do something else together. Presley would have come up with another chore to keep the kids occupied. Molly and Andy slipped off their stools and pulled her in for a group hug. Then they reluctantly left the kitchen. Presley heard the sound of the bell. That meant that another baby was about to be dropped off. She rushed out of the kitchen and didn't stop until she reached the front door. There was a well-dressed couple standing on the other side of the door with Grace's boyfriend, Jack. Dread filled her stomach when she spotted the anger in the woman's dark brown eyes. She opened the door and frowned. Jack, what brings you here? Presley wasn't sure if the couple who barely passed for 25 were Jack's parents.
We're Jack's parents. A mix-up has occurred. Can we come in and sort it out?
Jack's mother scowled. Zach, this isn't a mix-up. That girl stole from us. Zach shook his head.
Blair, we agreed that I'd do all the talking. We can hardly accuse someone of stealing with no proof.
There wasn't enough liquor in the world that would make Presley equipped to deal with this. But she didn't want to have someone as sweet as Jill dealing with the stuck-up couple. Let's sit and discuss this, Presley suggested, before leading the unwelcome trio into the sitting area. Thankfully, the reception desk sat empty. They took seats on the plush chairs, Blair seemingly surprised by how comfortable they were. Presley sat across from the unhappy family. Zach, why don't... It's Mr. Clifford to you. Blair's words were laced with disgust. Then it's Miss Carter to you. So, Mr. Clifford, what brings you high and mighty rich folks to the orphanage? Zach blushed.
Grace is in possession of a silver locket. It's expensive, and...
She stole it when she came to our house. Blair's interruptions were slowing down the conversation. Mrs. Clifford, do I need to excuse you from this conversation? Despite what you think, I don't have a limitless supply of time. Blair scowled. You're just as classless as that thing my son decided to take pity on. Presley arched a brow. Really? Is that the story you're going with, Jack?
Son, what aren't you telling us?
Zach demanded. Nothing. It's like I said, Grace stole the necklace. Presley shook her head. He's dating Grace. I think he's saying otherwise because Mrs. Clifford's horrible opinion of her. Zach rubbed his forehead.
It doesn't matter. Grace stole the necklace.
Your son gave her the necklace. That means it was a gift. Blair pointed a manicured finger at Presley. I'm Blair Clifford. You do not speak to me like that. You don't.
Jack, what are you doing here?
The question came from a stunned Grace. Sal was following her, his dark eyes lighting up when he made eye contact with Presley. Give me back that necklace now, you thief! Blair shrieked. Grace frowned. I didn't steal nothing. Presley sighed. Mrs. Clifford, you're rich, right? Blair scowled. How dare you inquire about my wealth? You have no class. We do well for ourselves, Zach said. So why do you care about a necklace that's $60 at the most? Are you bored? That girl stole. Mrs. Clifford, you don't think that's true? You have to know that if Grace wanted to steal something, it wouldn't be a locket. Was that lying around your house? Blair glared at her son. Tell them what you told us, Jack. Grace was jealous that I kissed Kelsey Nelson, so she stole my money and bought the locket. Tears filled Grace's eyes. Jack, you gave this to me when you asked me to be your girlfriend. My son can never love you. He wouldn't put my family through the embarrassment. Blair's words filled Presley with the desire to sock her in the mouth. Here's how things are going to go. You'll leave the orphanage and never come back. If you make any trouble for Grace, I'll tell everyone that will listen that you're so cheap that you bothered to harass a girl over a piece of jewelry that costs less than your shoes. I'll tell everyone that will listen how cold-hearted and evil you are. I'll pull funding from the orphanage if that thing doesn't give the locket back. Blair's threat made Zach shift in his seat. Crap. Grace scowled, pulled the necklace from her neck, and flung it at Blair with all her might. Then she stormed away, her shaking shoulders telling Presley that she was crying. We no longer want your patronage. Get your tax write-off somewhere else, Jill said as she walked over to the group. You heard my sister. Leave, Sal roared. Blair scowled. I'll be putting this complaint in with the council. I can't believe Cassandra allowed such filth to step foot on this island. The trio left the orphanage, Jack looking like a kicked puppy. Chapter 14. An hour later, Presley shifted the burden to one arm and knocked on the door. Seconds later, it opened, revealing a teary-eyed Grace. Are you here to tell me you were right? No. I'm here to talk. Grace stepped aside, and Presley entered the room. It had a queen-sized bed in the center and posters of various tourist attractions like the Space Needle, Stonehenge, and the Great Wall of China covering the walls. You want to travel? Presley placed the plastic bag of junk food and drinks on the desk, cluttered with sketch pads, drawing pencils, and a couple of fat folders. Just stuff to look at. You're going to tell me I was wrong for throwing the necklace? Presley pulled out a bag of the Funyuns that Grace loved along with Snickers bars and tossed them both to her. She pulled out a bottle of fruit punch and handed it to the girl. Presley grabbed the pretzels and a bottle of water and sat beside the heartbroken girl. I don't have to tell you it's wrong to toss jewelry at someone. I'm here to discuss your revenge plan. Grace frowned. Revenge plan? What are you going to do when you see Jack on Monday? Walk in the other direction. And make things easy for him? Why? 'Cause it'll be easier for me if I never have to speak to him again. He promised that we'd be together forever. But he lied to me. I can't stand it. I loved him so much. Grace's sudden wail caused Presley's heart to crack. She despised seeing someone she cared about suffer through such anguish. Presley wrapped an arm around the weeping girl and encouraged her to cry it out. For what seemed like hours, Grace shook as the heartbreak was purged from her body. When the tears stopped, a determined expression filled the teenager's face. Let's talk about our revenge plan. Grace's insistence caused Presley to smirk. She hungered to make Jack pay for humiliating one of her charges. She'd accomplished this one last thing before she found other accommodations. No way she was going to stay in a marriage with a man who saw her as another staff member. Sal would get his wish. He'd be rid of her. The next day, Presley sat at one of the tables designated for the staff that was helping out the orphanage. Sal tried to meet her gaze, but she avoided it every time. Thankfully, Grace served as the best excuse. She fell asleep beside the teenager who insisted on having a sleepover.
All Presley had to figure out was how she was going to avoid him for 2 nights in a row. Her eyes fell on Ainsley, who was smiling wide up at her handsome husband. Bitterness momentarily flashed in Presley's gut. Her sister hadn't visited her once since they arrived at the island. Her sense of abandonment couldn't smother the first words she said to her. "Hey, sis, this is the work table. We never get a day off around here." While Sal looked stunned, Ainsley shot her a sympathetic expression. "It's okay. I'd love to help." Ainsley's response wasn't surprising in the least. She was the charitable type. What bothered Presley was that these kids weren't people to pity. They were sweet, annoying beings that deserved affection. Presley's twin took a seat beside her and rubbed her back. "You doing okay, Pre?" "I need my twin right now. I miss living with you." "Come on, Ainsley. Take the bait. Suggest that I should live with you until something better comes up. Ask me how my marriage is going." Ainsley kissed her sister's cheek. "We're definitely due for a sleepover. You need to spend quality time with my dog Clifford and me." "A sleepover? What the hell?" Now it was time to fake excitement. "You have a dog?" "Yes. He's amazing. Kevin surprised me with Clifford the other night. He's a treasure." "I wish I could have a pet. You know how much I like cats. But things are a challenge." Sal's interested expression caused a flash of pain to fill her heart. Why was someone who had to be forced into a courtship interested in her? "I'll get a phone soon, then you'll have full access to me."
Miss Presley, can you make Michael give me back my toy?"
Molly pleaded to Ainsley. Ainsley smiled down at her. "I'm Miss Presley's twin. I'm Miss Ainsley. What's your name?"
"Molly, Michael took my bear."
Presley rubbed her forehead. "Come on, Molly. Let's talk to Michael about your bear." She took Molly's hands, and they walked over to Michael, who was hiding in the corner. Michael smiled up at Presley and handed her a note. Presley took it and peered down at the handwriting. "Presley, meet me outside. Don't tell a soul. I won't approach you unless you're alone." "Michael, who gave you this note?" Presley's question was met by a shake of the kid's head.
"I promise not to tell."
"Where's Molly's bear?" Presley's other question was met by guilt.
"Come on, Molly. I'll give it back."
"Wait here," Presley ordered. Something about this situation didn't feel right. Presley hurried back a few minutes later with an awkward expression on her face. Sis, we have a situation. I have to go find Molly's bear, and I can't host the event. Can you step in?" Ainsley nodded. "Sure. Do you have any games planned?" "Well, what happened was, ugh, give me your phone." Presley fished her phone out of her pocket and handed it to Ainsley. "The password is the same. Thank you, sis." 2 minutes later, it was evident that Presley wasn't going to shake her tail. Michael and Molly followed her into the nearly vacant lobby. Jill sat behind the reception desk drinking from a thermos of coffee. She couldn't exactly meet the author of the note like this. Then Sal joined them. "Michael, go give Molly her bear." Presley's order was given a bit too sharply. Sal raised an eyebrow.
"Michael, you heard Miss Presley. Do as she says."
Michael sighed, took Molly by the hand, and went into the elevator. Presley was practically alone with her husband.
"Why are you avoiding me?"
She tamped down her impatience. "Can we talk about this later?"
"No. We should discuss this now. What is going on?"
I eavesdropped on a private conversation. Yeah, like that'll go over well." It was a low blow, but she decided to aim for the jugular. "Do you want me to stay, Sal?" Sal grinned.
"Of course I do. I have something for you."
He fished a box out of his pants pocket and handed it to her. If this was a charm bracelet, Presley was going to scream. Fearing the truth, she leapt away from the gift as if it were about to explode. "No, I don't want it. I'm not taking another gift planned out by Kendrick. I can't do this anymore, Sal. All this fake effort, please don't make me take it." Presley rushed from the foyer, her only desire to escape the pain and humiliation. She ran for a couple of blocks, then paused and caught her breath. "Good. We lost him," Sal's aunt said. Presley turned to face Rose, who had a pleased expression on her face. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted, to look out for my interests." "Why send me a note? Why not come to the orphanage?" "I don't go where I'm not wanted." "Why come to me?" Rose sighed. "You might not believe this, but I want the best for Sal. He isn't happy with you, is he?" Presley glanced down at her feet. "No." "I knew that would be the case. Do you plan to stay with him?" Presley swallowed. "No." "Then I have a proposition for you. Allow me to assist you in finding another husband. You're a young, beautiful lady. Anyone would be fortunate to marry you." Presley wiped a tear away. "I'd rather leave the island than entertain someone else. I love him. I just can't. Ainsley will be fine. She'll survive without me. I'll tell Carrie and Yolanda not to accept their matches. They'll help me find another way out of this horrible town." "So, it's either my foolish nephew or no one else?" Presley nodded. "I'll talk to Cassandra. She'll find me a way home." "My nephew is catching up. Why don't you tell him how you feel?" Before Presley could respond with a "hell no," an arm wrapped around her shoulders.
"Aunt Rosa, what are you doing here?"
Sal's hostility didn't faze the woman.
"I was just getting to know your wife. I must take my leave."
Sal didn't say another word until his aunt was long gone.
"You okay, Presley? You aren't acting like yourself."
"I'm fine. I don't feel like going to a baby shower."
"Okay, let's go down to the beach."
It was on the tip of Presley's tongue to say no. Then a realization hit. Her days with Sal were numbered. She supposed she might as well make the most of them. "Oh, okay, that sounds good." Chapter 15.
"Presley, wait up."
She sighed and turned to face her husband. Sal was handsome as ever, wearing a black t-shirt and jean shorts. His dark hair was damp from his shower. His scent nearly drowned her. His eyes held worry.
"You have been avoiding me."
Ever since their quiet walk on the beach, Presley had been keeping her distance. She slept in her room, woke up early enough to take on chores, and participated in homework club in the afternoons. After speaking to her twin, Presley would have a very difficult conversation with Sal. She wasn't ready yet. "I can't talk right now. I have to meet Ainsley." Sal frowned.
"I was hoping we could play some pool."
"Was that Kendrick's suggestion?" Sal rubbed his beard.
"No, Kendrick."
"Forget about it. I'll talk to you when I get back." Presley sighed in relief when she wasn't waylaid by any of the children. She made her way to the spa where Ainsley worked, hoping that her twin would understand. She'd be all right. Kevin loved the woman enough to buy a dog for her. Ainsley's dreams were coming true. Presley was down the block from her destination when she noticed her sister running toward her, tears pouring down her face. There was trouble in paradise. "I guess our talk will have to wait." "Twin, what happened?" Presley wrapped her arms around her sister, who clutched her just as tight. Presley allowed Ainsley to fall apart in her arms until she spotted a couple of nosy bystanders filming them with their phones. "Ain, calm down. Don't cry. Let's grab a drink so we can talk about things." It took effort, but Ainsley forced the tears back and allowed Presley to lead her into the diner that was halfway down the block. A cheery hostess led them to the table in the back and left them with menus. Ainsley collapsed into the seat across from her. Presley shot her a tentative smile. What happened? Kevin used to be married to Stacy, and everyone knew it. I can't believe he didn't tell me. Why keep this from me? He was probably embarrassed, Ain. Think about it. Stacy is nothing more than a shallow, hateful broad without a heart, and Kevin was stupid enough to put a ring on it. Or he still loves her. The difficult conversation wasn't going to be had that night. Ainsley was hurt and needed her sister's support. Presley formed a plan of attack in her mind. She would need to convince Ainsley that Kevin was the perfect man for her. Sal racked his brain trying to figure out why Presley was under the assumption that Kendrick planned all of their dates. Fine, his brother had lent him a helping hand in the beginning, but he wasn't the one who listened to Presley, learned all her likes and dislikes. Sal cared, and he wanted to give Presley a token representing their forever. He was about to look for his wife when he heard the horrid bell. Sal made his way down to the lobby and spotted Aunt Rosa with her back leaning against the reception desk. Jill was pacing the area in front of their aunt. Sal glared.
Aunt Rosa, what are you doing here?
Don't take that tone with me, young man. I've come to tell you that I've come to a decision.
About what?
Sal's heart pounded. I'll be willing to sign over my share to this building over to the three of you if you meet one term.
We don't have the money to buy you out.
Sal's sharp words caused his aunt to shoot him a look of disapproval. I know your parents taught you not to interrupt your elders. As I said, I want you to fulfill one term. I need the three of you to marry. Sal, you and Kendrick are already married. Jill has 6 months to find a groom, or else I'll sell my share to the third party. Jill groaned. Aunt Rosa, when will I find the time to marry someone? That's the problem, dear Jill. You never have time for yourself. I hope you have a lovely night. I'll see myself out. After Aunt Rosa left the orphanage, Jill sagged in her seat at the reception desk. Sal wanted to comfort his sister, but Presley was on the forefront of his mind.
Jill, I'll talk to you later about this. I need to figure something out.
He needed insight. He rushed into his room and locked the door. Moments later, he selected a contact and hit call.
Is this a scammer? If so, I'm not in the mood. This is the worst day of my life. Well, not the worst day, but...
Carrie, I'm not a scammer. This is Sal. I need your help.
Why?
Carrie's hostility told him he'd need to dig deep to gain her assistance.
Presley's been avoiding me.
Did Kendrick tell you to call me? I may be a hopeless romantic, but I'm still loyal to my bestie.
No, I decided to call you myself. I figured you'd be able to help me sort things out.
Fine. Since I'm the reasonable sort, tell me everything. Tell me the entire story. Don't leave anything out.
Sal dropped on his bed, then did what Carrie instructed. Carrie groaned.
Why in the hell did you say those things to Kendrick when you live in a crowded orphanage?
Fear shot through Sal.
We were in a closed room.
You both made rookie mistakes. Presley didn't listen to the entire conversation, and you spoke careless words. You need to tell her the truth. She's planning on moving back to our boring town.
Do you know where she is?
She planned on telling Ainsley she's leaving. Maybe you can explain yourself and...
Thanks for all your help, Carrie. I'll have to go.
Sal hung up on the helpful woman and rushed to Kevin and Ainsley's house.
Have you heard from Presley?
Sal was desperate, so he ignored Kevin's exhausted expression. He had been waiting outside his best friend's house for 15 minutes. Had Presley already gone to Cassandra? Was she being taken past the barrier?
She's at the diner with my wife. Why? She's leaving, Kevin. She isn't happy here and she wants out. What makes you think that?
Kevin's skeptical expression was no comfort to Sal. Ainsley had done little to check on Presley. It wasn't like she had the insight that Carrie and Yolanda had.
It doesn't matter how I know. What restaurant are they at?
I saw Presley lead her to the diner down the street from the spa. Sal was calculating the route, figuring that he would intersect Presley in time before she met with Cassandra.
Ainsley's upset right now. Presley isn't going to leave her. Why don't you...
Sal poured on the speed and rushed to the diner. He gasped in exhaustion when he arrived. He was leaning against the wall right beside the door. He was determined not to interrupt Presley's conversation with Ainsley. That would only upset his wife even more. Instead, he considered what he would say to her. Presley followed Ainsley out of the diner. She was confident that her sister would reconcile with Kevin. She'd wait a few days before speaking to Cassandra.
"Have a nice night, twin. Love you."
"Love you too," Ainsley replied. Then they went their separate ways. Presley had traveled a block when she sensed someone following her. She spun around to see Sal strolling toward her.
Let's go for a walk.
"Sal, it's been a long day. I just want to..."
You made a mistake, Presley.
Presley frowned.
"What do you mean?"
You didn't listen to the entire conversation I had with Kendrick. I said those things out of annoyance. My brother was sticking his nose in my business, and I didn't like it. You missed me telling him I wanted you to stay.
Hope entered Presley's heart. "Because I'm good with the kids?"
Because I'm in love with you. I bought something for you.
Sal handed Presley the velvet box, and she popped it open to reveal an engagement ring.
I didn't think a charm bracelet was the best way to show you that I want a life with you. I planned all along to ask you to marry me.
You really want me?"
Presley couldn't believe the words Sal had spoken.
With all my heart. I love you, Presley.
Presley smiled.
"I love you too, and I accept."
Sal took the box from Presley and slid the ring on her finger. His lips met hers in a hungry kiss. Her arms looped around his neck, and she sank in her forever. Sal was stubborn, indelicate, but kind, loving, and loyal. He was the man who suited her best. She would have to call her best friends to let them know that she found her place on the island. Presley just had to make sure that they could find theirs. Epilogue. 15 years later. Presley straightened the veil on Grace's head. Her blusher was secure. The lovely bride was wearing one of Presley and Julia's creations, an empire-waisted wedding gown with a sweetheart neckline and a foot-long train. The beaded embroidery took weeks for Presley to perfect. In the end, she was satisfied with the satin masterpiece. Grace stood in the room that rested right before the chapel door.
"You look good, Grace."
Presley sniffled through her words, sad she was letting another one of her children go. Grace lived at the orphanage until her 18th birthday. Then she left the island for 6 years to earn her degree in marriage and family psychology. The lovely bride returned to the orphanage and helped children find their forever homes. She counseled children and eased their transition. She also had sessions with families to ensure that everything was going well. Eventually, Grace fell in love with Tessa's nephew, Toby. 2 years into the whirlwind courtship, he proposed to Grace. Since they both were employees of the orphanage, the couple wanted to hold their wedding at the chapel. The door sprang open, and Presley's 4-year-old daughter, Bailey, rushed into the room, followed by an exasperated Layla. At 15, Julia and Kendrick's oldest daughter took pride in caring for her baby cousin. Presley and Sal waited over a decade to have children. Bailey had been a Christmas baby.
"Mommy, can I have cake?"
Bailey's excited question caused Grace to chuckle. Not until the reception bells. The bride's response caused her daughter to pout.
But I want it now. I think everyone wants it now.
Presley squatted to Bailey's level. If you have cake now, it'll ruin your adventure. Bailey frowned.
Mommy, can I have the cake and the adventure now?
Sorry, honey. It doesn't work that way.
Grace, get married quick so I can have cake.
Grace chuckled. I'll see what I can do. Come on, Bells. Let's grab a good seat. See you guys later. I'll take lots of pictures. Layla shot a wide grin before leading Bailey away. You feel good about our revenge plan? Presley's question caused a smile to fill Grace's face. Living a life filled with purpose? Jack, I haven't thought of him in years. I ran into him last week. He apologized for lying to his mother. Apparently, she scared away every potential love match. No one will date him. He applied for a mail-order bride. She just might leave him for someone else. I feel bad for Jack. I may have been an orphan, but I had parental figures who loved me unconditionally. I told him the only way he'll ever be happy is if he stands up to his mother. What did he say? He agreed with me. Presley, I'm glad you arrived. You're the best thing to happen to the orphanage. I'm glad I married Sal. Presley held back the tears and smiled when Sal entered the room. Her dashing husband was in a fitted tux. His eyes grew moist when he spotted the bride.
You look beautiful, Grace.
Grace grinned. Thanks. Your family does good work. Presley beamed with pride. 60% of the profits from her gowns went to the orphanage. Her goal to give the orphans the world was coming true. There was a fund to send children to summer camps, school vacations, and to college. I heard a rumor that Andy will need a dress soon. Presley's taunt elicited a scowl from Sal.
I'm not ready for that yet.
Kendrick poked his head in. It's time. Presley kissed Grace's cheek, then allowed her brother-in-law to escort her to the front row. She took a seat beside Julia, who was already dabbing at tears with a tissue. Kendrick joined his wife, his eyes on the groom, who had a smile on his face. Everyone stood, and Molly began playing the wedding march on the piano. Grace was a beautiful bride, her love for Toby warming her heart. The wedding ceremony was quick and beautiful. It was followed by a reception that was held in the dining hall.
Good work as always, Aunt Bree,
Ainsley's daughter Haley said. She was sitting across from Presley with Bailey in her lap. Bailey gestured at the massive wedding cake.
The cake looks yummy.
This one never gives up, Presley's mother said as she joined their table. Over the last 15 years, Presley learned to forgive her parents for their abandonment. Them dedicating their lives to help the orphanage shoved her along the road of forgiveness. Was the relationship with their parents perfect? No. Ainsley was the one who was able to hug and make up with ease. But she did appreciate that she had a home, purpose, and a family that loved her fiercely. The end. This has been Presley, Bride's Dock on Portum Island, Book 6, by Debbie Civil. Narrated by Ishkiia Paige.